Yes.
Here.
Excellent. Okay, it being 7:01 PM with a super packed agenda this evening, I want to begin immediately. Um, Just to notify everybody, this proceeding is the Thursday, January 28th, 21 meeting of the Stoughton Planning Board. This proceeding is being recorded for rebroadcast and retransmission over Stoughton Media Access Corporation, and therefore you should guide your actions accordingly with respect to this hearing. With that, I'm going to ask for a motion to open up the meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Roll call vote. Mr. Garland?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Demuse?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Did I forget anybody? I don't.
No.
Mr. Garland, again, just to make sure on the motion.
Yes.
Thank you. I know you are the motion maker, but I want to make sure you voted as well. Okay. And the chair votes yes. With that, the meeting is open. The motion is passed unanimously. I need a motion to open up the continued public hearing on the petition of Freeman Trust, 1859 Dorchester Avenue, Dorchester, Massachusetts, 02124, represented by Spalding Tobias Architects Incorporated, 241 Cap A Street, Boston, Mass. 02210, for a special permit under the Stoughton Center Mixed Use Overlay District, also known as the SHMOOD bylaw, section 9.3.6, 1 in parentheses, small a, for dwelling units above a retail, restaurant, professional office, and service, personal service, or other non-residential use at ground level, and for a special permit under section 9.3.16, 2, capital A in parentheses, for off-site parking for the property located at 760-770 Washington Street, further identified in Assessor's Plan number 54, Lot 285. Can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Kelly.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Demuse. Mr. Garland?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Demuse?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. It's unanimous. I would like to move to Mr. Craig Horsfald, the engineer on this project, for the last piece of information that I think we were waiting for on this project. Thank you, Mr. Horsfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did have a chance to review the latest revised plans. I think the ones that have been distributed to the planning board were revised January 21, but there has been one final revision, and that's due to the request for some additional information regarding the condition of construction up against the abutting property over at number 14 Freeman Street. The plans have been revised to include now an architectural sketch detail that outlines particular conditions of the two buildings as they abut each other or closely abut each other. That's been added to sheet 6, and that indicates that there will be an asphalt berm included on the ground level that will be constructed from the top of the existing structure at number 14 Freeman, and will be sloping away from that structure into the Malcolm Parsons property. For vehicle protection, for vehicles being protected from driving into the building, there will be a guardrail that will be constructed between the columns of the structure as they come to the ground. And there'll also be concrete wheel stops. We feel that this would sufficiently allow water to flow on the ground level and not be trapped between the buildings, the space between the buildings, and make it into the drainage system that's proposed for the site.
And I'm sorry,
No, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Horsfeld, that I take it this newest iteration was discussed with the abutter who raised the issue?
It was actually Mark Tisdale and myself met with Mr. Odenweller, the owner of the property next door. We went out to his property on January 22nd. He showed us around the property, the condition of the walls and everything in the basement. It's a nice dry basement. The building's been in place for some time, so that's actually surprising with an old structure like that. But he was happy to show us all around. He has seen this plan. We've discussed it with him. I believe he is satisfied with it. And we assured him that it would be made a part of the site plan. So I'm happy to see that it's on sheet 6 of the latest revised drawings.
Thank you very much. We'll now hear from Mr. Charbonneau.
Yes, thanks, Joe. So I have nothing to add on to Craig's comments. The remaining issues that needed to be addressed were engineering issues, and the revised plans also include a couple of items that were discussed at the last meeting, one of which being the extension of fence along the edge of the satellite parking area, and the plans do reflect that. So engineering seems to be satisfied with the plans. I am satisfied with the plans, and I have drafted a decision with input from engineering, from the applicant. A copy went to the applicant's attorney. So the applicant, I'm sorry, and the abutting attorney. So the draft decision was circulated, and I have updated information from the draft. So I am ready to go over that decision whenever the board is ready.
Okay, hearing that there are no further outstanding issues, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the special permit under bylaw section 9.3.6, 1 in parentheses, small a, for dwelling units located above a retail, restaurant, professional office, service, personal service, and other non-residential uses at ground level. Can I have a motion to that effect?
So made.
Thank you,
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Demuse,
Yes.
Mr. Garland,
Yes.
chair votes yes. That motion is approved unanimously. Next motion, for a special permit under 9.3.16, 2A in parentheses, for off-site parking for the property located at 760, 770 Washington Street, further identified on Assessor's Plan 54, Lot 285. Can I have a motion to that effect, please?
So made.
Thank you, Mr. Demuse. Thank you, Mr. Garland. Roll call vote on that motion. Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Demuse,
Yes.
Mr. Garland,
Yes.
chair votes yes. That's approved. I need a motion now to close the public hearing.
So made.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Can we have that for our recording secretary to clarify that? Just pick one of you.
So Joe,
Jonathan
you want me
made
to
the
pull up
motion.
Decision.
Okay. Now I want to take the roll call vote on the closing the public hearing, and then we'll review the decision.
Okay.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Demuse,
Yes.
Mr. Garland,
Yes.
chair votes yes. Now, would you load the decision, Mr. Charbonneau?
Yes. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
So the cover page is basic information referencing the special permits for the mixed-use building and off-site parking within the Schmood. The name hasn't officially changed yet, so unfortunately we have to still call it the Schmood. Just the basic information about the applicant, date, owner, representative, and the location of the project, and also a brief summary of the project. second page, subsection 2 is just the procedural history of the project. The application submittals are then listed. Actually, this is great. I can actually clean this up right here. And one more. Okay. Take that typo. Related documents.
I'm sorry, I thought Mr. Kelly said something.
No, sir.
Okay, anybody, did somebody else say something before we move?
I don't know what I don't know what comments anyone would have.
Okay, just go ahead.
So related documents, just the public hearing notice, a butters list, long-term operation and maintenance plan, and then various communication from department heads, also from abutters, findings of the board, then more specific findings of the board relative to the schmood and the special permits. The purposes of the schmood district and the special permits within the schmood and the projects within them. Then the actual decision itself and general conditions, and I will just briefly go through each of the conditions. These general conditions are usually part of every decision and are pretty boilerplate. The expiration of the site, so actually the site plan approval, I will change that to special permit.
Special permits, okay.
Yes. Pearl. Prior to commencement of construction, a revised full set of approved plans, calculations showing any required changes to the site plan shall be submitted to the planning board, and that the decision shall be scanned onto and incorporated into the approved site plan, special permit plan on the last page of the plan. Electronic PDF copies, again, mentioning the decision being scanned into the plans. Any modifications, as always, to this plan or to this project shall be brought back before the board for determination as far as whether or not they are minor or major in nature. The applicant's responsibility for recording it. Pre-construction meeting stipulation. All applicable zoning bylaw requirements shall be satisfied. The project shall be constructed in accordance with any approvals relative to this project. No site activity take place under the special permit without proper authorization and permitting from all local and state agencies. Construction shall be performed by contractors licensed within Stoughton. Statement regarding inspection fees through the engineering department shall be paid prior to the issuance of a demolition permit. The applicant's responsibility to bear the cost of any necessary outside testing, inspection, or other services.
John, could you go back to number 12, please?
Is there a question on that?
No, not there, sorry.
The requirement of the applicant to submit final construction plans to the engineering department and public works department prior to the issuance of demolition permits. The issuance of building permit or the initiation of site work, whichever of these occurs first. Required soil and erosion control measures shall be erected and serviceable prior to any site activity, and all grades exposed for greater than 30-day period shall be stabilized. Applicant shall be responsible for ensuring that any trucks involved in hauling materials on or off-site are properly covered and otherwise secured from spilling material along the street outside the site. And that A violation of this could lead to the discontinuation of construction activities and/or permits and fines. The applicant shall maintain a clean site and shall install aprons at the edge of the property to prevent vehicles leaving the property from tracking the sediment. And wetting and stabilization of exposed grades, that this is mainly during hot, dry weather. The requirement of final as-built plan stamped and signed by the fully licensed project engineer shall be submitted to engineering and planning, along with a letter that details any differences between the as-built and the approved plan prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Long-term operation and maintenance plan shall be submitted to engineering for review and approval prior to the issuance of a building permit, and it shall be recorded, and proof shall be submitted back to planning board and engineering department before a building permit's issued. Special conditions. As a condition of this approval, the applicant agrees to relinquish all prior approvals related to the subject property at 760 to 770 Washington Street. The applicant shall be required to clean the entire drainage system at the end of construction. Any existing or proposed wall-mounted lights shall be LED style and shall not shed light onto abutting properties. The existing sewer line shall be inspected using a camera to ensure integrity, and the camera test will be required of the applicant's engineer at their expense and performed during construction for the existing sewer stub and sewer main on Washington Street. Repairs will be required if necessary at the discretion of the sewer department. Existing sewer service that is proposed to be reused from the for the proposed connection from the oil water separator shall be replaced with new piping from the 12-inch diameter manhole to the existing manhole on Freeman Street. A new cleanout shall be installed to replace the 12-inch manhole. Simply hours of construction. These are standard hours of construction with most projects, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 on Saturday. No machinery shall be started or run prior to those start times. No construction activities on Sunday or any state of holiday. Will require cash bond in an amount that will cover the full replacement cost of all landscaping prior to the issuance of certificate of occupancy. The bond will be held for one growing season after the landscaping is installed for the bonding site and off-site satellite parking areas. Prior to a demolition permit, the applicant is responsible for providing information to the building commissioner that proves that the party wall between the subject property and the abutting property at 14 to 18 Freeman Street will remain structurally sound and continue functioning as a firewall. The owner of the abutting property at 14 to 18 Freeman Street shall be granted the permanent right of access to enter onto the subject property for the purposes of conducting inspections and/or repairs to the existing wall that is located on the property line to the subject property. The owner of the abutting property shall provide the applicant with a minimum of 24 hours notice prior to entering onto the property for such inspections and/or repairs. This provision can be waived in the case of emergency repairs, such as circumstances that constitute imminent danger to health and/or safety of the abutting property. In such an instance, the abutting property owner shall notify the applicant via overnight mail with signature required. In any case, the abutter and his agents are responsible for repairing any resulting damage to the applicant's property. The applicant shall install and maintain LED lights on each of the pencil holly to be lit between dusk and dawn. The applicant shall provide a gate at the entrance to the open space area along the northern side of the building from Washington Street. The gate will remain accessible to the public between dawn and dusk. The applicant shall work with the Stoughton Police Department on the location and installation of security cameras in the off-site parking area to monitor the lot being created, as well as a portion of the adjacent municipal parking lot. All HVAC and related equipment shall be screened from view from all vantage points. And that is the draft decision.
Anybody on the board have any comments or any further changes to the decision? I'm going to.
John,
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Horsford.
was there a condition in there about the reconstruction of the sidewalks?
Oh, no, there wasn't. So that's right. You had mentioned that, Craig. So I didn't see that in the previous approval.
It was part of the previous special conditions.
Okay. So which sidewalks were required to be constructed as a part of the prior approval, Craig?
Along the frontage of Washington Street and Freeman Street for the entire length of the property.
Wrong.
Hello?
Yes, just wait a minute. I'm going to want to make sure John gets this before
Yep.
I get you, Dan.
Joe, I lost my internet connection. I'm just trying to get in by phone, and I'm gonna cut out and try to get back in again on the internet.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
We are-
The
Is
applicant
this
showed.
for the its full width.
For the length and width.
You're right.
Length and width, Mr. Horsfall?
Correct.
Oh, I think the length is covered by the language that says the entire length of frontage of the subject property, Craig?
Yeah, I think that does it, John.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we have to wait till Mr., because I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the decision and a motion to approve my signing it on behalf of the board. So we'll have to wait till Mr. Kelly joins us back for this technical.
I can hear on the, Joe, I can hear on the phone, so I can make a vote if I have to. I just don't know what's going on with my computer.
Ms. Tugayas, I saw your hand raised.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Conley is participating via phone, and he was unable to see the draft decision. And it looked to me as if there were a few new conditions added that weren't in the draft that we reviewed.
I can speak to that.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
Those were conditions that were part of the previous approval that were carried over to this one. Some of them were actually standard conditions. There was only a couple that were special conditions. So most of the conditions that got carried over, not all the conditions get carried over, and most of the ones that you see were added were actually general conditions that are part of every decision. There was only, I think the sidewalk was one of the ones that was carried over, but there weren't many special conditions carried over.
Great. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the decision and to allow me to sign on behalf of the board. So
Motion
with
to
that,
approve.
thank you, Mr. Demuse. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Second,
Thank you, Mr. Garland. Roll call vote. Mr. Kelly,
yes,
Mr. Demuse,
Yes.
Mr. Garland,
Yes.
chair votes yes.
Excellent.
Congratulations.
I want to thank the board and the applicant for their hard work and patience, and Craig for your hard work. And it's been a long time coming, and it's nice that it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, only 7 years.
Well,
Start construction tomorrow.
on behalf of Mr. Conley, Mr. Broadmerkle, and myself, thank you to all of you for your hard work. And we look forward to moving forward with this project. Thank you.
So Cheryl, what's going to happen is I'm going to try and coordinate with Joe. If not tomorrow morning, then I'm in the office next Tuesday. So next Tuesday, the latest, I will get together with Joe to endorse this decision and have it filed with the town clerk. And I will send you a copy scanned once that happens, and that will initiate your 20-day appeal period. And I also want to thank Mr. Odenweller and his attorney. They've been very civil and very polite through this, and they've really, I think they've added a lot to the decision that will allow them to have their property protected. So I appreciate their involvement as well.
Okay, thank you.
With that, wish the group on that particular subject good night, and we're going to move to the next item of business.
Yeah, and Joe, I apologize. I need to step away. I have a conflict in my schedule.
I was aware of that.
We still need to make a motion to let the chairman sign in our behalf.
We did.
Oh.
We did. I asked, that was the last vote, Mr. Demuse.
Oh.
That was a
okay.
combination vote to approve the decision to have me.
Oh, okay. Okay, good night all.
Hey,
Thank you.
Joe, John,
you.
John, can you stay on for a second, please? John Gowan? Can you
Yeah,
stay?
What-
I'm sorry. Can I just ask a question because it affects a couple matters? I know you have to step away for tonight's meeting. Do you anticipate being at the next meeting, John?
yes,
You do.
absolutely. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Okay. thank you.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Clements. Mr. Charbonneau, would you please put the legal notice up on the screen, please? As we're reorganizing the board for the next project, I will ask for a motion to open up the public hearing on Stoughton Crossing Limited Partnership, with the beneficial owner being 139 Realty Trust, 475 School Street, Suite 9, Marshfield, Massachusetts, 02050, represented by High Point Engineering, 45 Dan Road, Suite 140, Canton, Mass. 02021, for a two-lot definitive subdivision under Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 81, Cap K through 81 GG, and the Stoughton Land Subdivision Regulations of February 17th, 1999, with a plan entitled Silver Glen Estates, located off Silver Glen Road, further identified in Assessor's Plan number 82, Lot 57. Can I have a motion to that effect, please?
So made.
A second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Demuse,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Now Mr. Charbonneau, I lost the legal notice.
Okay, I thought we were moving on to something else, and I'm going to be putting up the plan, so hold on.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
A public hearing will be held on Thursday, January 28th at 7 p.m. on the petition of the property owner and applicant, Stoughton Crossing Limited Partnership, beneficial owner 139 Realty Trust, 475 School Street, Suite 9, Marshfield, Massachusetts, 02050, and represented by High Point Engineering, Incorporated, 45 Dan Road, Suite 140, Canton, Mass. 02021, for a two-lot definitive subdivision under Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 81K through 81GG, and the Stoughton Land Subdivision Regulations of February 17th, 1999, for the plan entitled Silver Glen Estates, located off Silver Glen Road, further identified on Assessor's Plan number 82, Lot 57. The meeting will be recorded and rebroadcast on Stoughton Media Access Corporation. To participate, call cell phone number 1-617-675-4444 and enter PIN 4448. Oh, wait a minute, John. Oh. 277-487-1042 hashtag. To participate via Google Meets, please use this following link: meet-google.com/YBY-KYXHM MNF.
MMF, Joe.
MMF. Thank you for the correction. You can copy and paste this link into your web browser. In the event that these measures are unsuccessful or inconvenient, a recording of the meeting, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceeding will be posted on the town's website and/or Stoughton Media Access Corporation as soon as possible after the meeting. The subdivision plans can be viewed at the office of the Stoughton Planning Board, 10 Pearl Street, second floor, Engineering Department, Town Hall, Stoughton, Massachusetts, during normal business hours by appointment only per town manager policy. The petitioner and/or his representative or any other persons desiring to be heard in this matter should appear at the time and place designated. Town of Stoughton Planning Board, Joseph Scardino, Chairperson, published in the Journal Sun edition. Can you scroll up January 13th, 2021 and January 20th, 2021? Will the applicant and/or his representative come forward and identify yourselves for the record?
Mr. Chairman, Attorney Barry Crimmins of 909 Washington Street. here on behalf of the applicant. I'll let Nicole introduce herself, and then I'd like to address a quick procedural item, if I may.
Yeah, and as Barry mentioned, my name is Nicole Dunphy, Associate Senior Project Manager with High Point Engineering. I'm also here to represent on the client's behalf.
So, Mr. Chairman, the reason I asked about Mr. Garland's availability for the next meeting, it's I guess less of an issue on this particular hearing as it may be on the next two that I'm also involved with. This being a definitive subdivision application under Chapter 41, it only requires a majority vote of the board. You're a 5-person board. That means 3 members would have to approve the definitive subdivision plan. If the board were inclined to approve it tonight, of course, all 3 members would have to vote in the affirmative to approve. Otherwise, if this matter were to be continued to a future meeting, assuming Mr. Garland was at that future meeting, you would then have 4 members available. My understanding is Mr. Carver is on a more extended absence and is not due back until sometime in March. So that was why I asked the question, Mr. Chairman. But sort of with that caveat, we are prepared to go forward tonight. Of course, under the Mullen Rule, Mr. Garland would still be eligible to vote at the future meeting so long as he reviews the record of the meeting, as long as he only misses 1 meeting at which testimony is given. If Mr. Carver misses more than 1 meeting at which testimony is given, he would not be able to vote. So we are proceeding cautiously, sort of with that caveat. So I appreciate the board's indulgence on that. And with that, I think I would turn it over to Nicole for a presentation of the subdivision.
Yes, just tonight in particular, Mr. Crimmins, we're sticking to those guidelines, the time guidelines. Otherwise, we'll be here at 1 o'clock in the morning. So,
well, yeah, matters may be. That's why I mentioned that, Mr. Chairman. A couple of your next matters may have to be expedited, I'm afraid.
Yes. So anyway, I just want to put that on the table, and thank you for the recitation of the law. Mr. Charbonneau and I are full aware of the constraints with respect to voting. With that, Ms. Dunphy, would you proceed?
Yes, thank you. So what you see before you is a definitive subdivision plan set to create a 2-lot subdivision for a 17+ acre parcel of land located at the end of Silver Glen Road. I will remind you that we were before you back in September of 2020 for an A&R, which was approved by the board and created Lot 2, which you see on this plan here as Parcel A. So the subject of this application would create a 2-lot subdivision, which would create the lot you see. I'm looking for north there, but I don't see it. On the bottom of the road at the end of Silver Glen Road, which would be identified as Lot 3. It would be a 4.4 acre lot, and the second lot associated with the subdivision would be 12+ acres of open space land that our intention is to donate to the Conservation Commission as part of open space land, which would be contiguous to the Shiretown property and Glen Echo area. So the intent of Lot 3 is to create a single-family residential lot. We've had multiple meetings with various members of the town, including Mr. Charbonneau, Mr. Horsfall, Deputy Chief Green, to review our development intentions and solicit some feedback. What we're proposing, actually, let me take a step back. We also met with the zoning enforcement officer to get a little feedback on frontage. The lot has about 50 plus or minus feet of frontage at the end of Silver Glen Road. We discussed that with the zoning enforcement officer to see if it was a grandfathered in with the intent for future development of this lot. He indicated that he felt that we would have to create the legal frontage for the current zoning. So our proposal shows the extension of Silver Glen Road into a new dead end for right-of-way only. We're requesting a waiver from the construction of that extended roadway and instead are proposing to install an 18-foot wide paved driveway that'll be about 400 feet in length from the end of Silver Glen Road to the new building envelope footprint, which is about 4,000 square feet, as you can see in the bottom portion of the property. Along with this development will be some minor grading around the limits of the property and stormwater management improvements, which we are dealing with the Conservation Commission with NOI applications on that. We are also, we added a list of the waivers in our application package that we're requesting, as well as onto the cover sheet of the site plans. So some of the requested waivers include the limit of a dead end extension. The bylaw is 500 feet. We're proposing, in order to be allowed to create the adequate frontage, to extend the road to 540.03 feet. So we would look for relief for 40.03 feet. And as I mentioned before, we're requesting waiver from the construction of the actual cul-de-sac and have it there for right-of-way only, which would eliminate the need for extensive engineering review and engineering plans for the roadway extension. Based on that, the applicant has requested a waiver from the filing fee from $4,515, $3,000 because of the limited design review scope of this project. In addition to that waiver, we're requesting a waiver from the environmental impact statement. This project, again, is a single family lot and then a conservation lot with no road extension and no development on the 12+ acre lot. The scope does not typically warrant an environmental impact statement for a project of this size. So that's pretty much an overview of what we're requesting at this time. And I'm happy to take any questions from the town.
Before we do that, Ms. Dunphy, I want to hear from Mr. Horsfeld, please.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Nicole, for the presentation. We did have a chance to review the definitive subdivision plans. As Ms. Dunphy had stated, much of the engineering content that we typically see in a definitive subdivision is absent from this plan. So our review was strictly limited to the plan content for lot creation and so forth. So we did have some minor comments regarding some additional labeling for a few bearings and distances and things that were missing from the plan. Shape factor of the new lot needs to be added to the plan, and the rectangular boxes for lot widths and so forth.
I don't mean to interrupt, Mr. Horsfall. We have, I did receive a letter from Don Charbonneau with those comments, and I don't know if you saw that. We did prepare a letter in response to those comments and submit a revised set of plans to go with those.
I haven't had a chance to review that revised set, but we'll take a look at those.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So Craig, those just came in. I think a couple days ago. So yeah, those are new.
It was a couple weeks ago. It was.
Was it? Okay.
Sorry, it was December 23rd, just before the holidays.
Mr. Horsfeld, the board would like you to comment on the waiver requests.
Sure. The dead end street waiver, it's a minor request. It's an additional 40.03 feet of required length for the total length of dead end road. The request to reduce the filing fee, as Nicole had stated, there won't be an exhaustive review anticipated from the engineering department. Typically, we get into all the design construction items associated with road construction. Since there's no road construction here, our review is limited. I'd like to point out, though, that the applicant is filing for a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission.
Yes.
So any stormwater runoff, lot grading, driveway construction associated with the single-family home construction will be reviewed by our office, but through that avenue. So it will be through the Conservation Commission permitting process.
Yes, and as you know, just for the applicant's information, the planning board does not like to approve plans until after the Concom has completed their review. And point number one. Point number two, considering that you're asking for a waiver of the environmental impact, we would consider the review by the Concom to be tantamount in this particular project, I would believe, to an environmental impact report. So we would certainly, I would only consider the waiver until after the Concom has completed their analysis. And Mr. Charbon, a question for you.
Yes.
Did we receive, the applicant referenced a zoning opinion from the building commissioner? Are you in receipt of that?
I would have to look for that. I know he sent me zoning reviews letters for a handful of projects.
Well, I don't think we're going to be in emergency to need that tonight, but I just wanted to raise that question because
That issue actually came up during one of the meetings we had at Town Hall in the meeting room before COVID, when there were all of us in one room. That's when that issue came up about extending the road to create proper frontage.
yes, but we need the standard procedure in the planning department is that we don't move forward until we have a zoning code officer opinion on that subject.
Could I,
Okay.
could I ask Mr. Chairman for clarification on that? Are you just asking on the issue relative to the lot frontage?
Yes, the issue that would involve zoning. That's in the code. That's at the code officer's discretion and not the planning board.
Okay.
Correct.
And
Yep.
that's why we want to make sure, given this past history of some projects, the planning board wants to remove any confusion that we are a replacement for or making decisions in lieu of either the commissioner or the zoning board of appeals. So therefore, we start our hearings off with the code officer's review.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. When are you going back to Concom, Ms. Dunphy?
Next Thursday,
Okay, and is that the first visit?
the second visit.
Okay. Was there the comment letter? Did you get a comment letter after the first hearing?
I've been in discussions with Jim Conlon. He has not completed his review of the NOI applications, even though we're coming up for our second hearing. I did receive a comment letter from an abutter, which we are preparing a response for and submitting by the end of this week. So they'll have it for the next hearing, but I have not received comments from Mr. Conlon at this time.
Okay. Is that abutter present this evening?
I am.
You please state your name and address for the record.
Michelle Kaiserman, and I'm also accompanied by Norm Kaiserman of 107 Pondview Lane.
And what is your concern about this project, ma'am?
So in terms of the item on the agenda tonight and the plan that we received, which was the creating of just the lot, that was map 82 lot 57, and we received also a cover letter that went with the application. so we submitted a letter to the board. It was the other day, so I don't know if it has been reviewed. So some of the questions that we had was in creating this kind of secondary cul-de-sac on top of the Silver Glen one, is this setting a precedent in town on extensions?
I'll let Mr. Horsfeld answer that since that's an engineering issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just in review, we received this. I actually received it today. I think it was submitted yesterday. So prior to the meeting tonight, took a quick look at the roadway network in town, and I did come across several roads that have a similar situation. This one's a little different because it is such a short cul-de-sac, but the cul-de-sacs have been extended in several circumstances throughout town. I can give you a few names of some roads. Low Ave and Low Ave Extension, Curtis Ave and William Kelly Road, Raymond Road, Angelos Road, and McGee Ave. These are all examples of roads that have been extended. Their cul-de-sacs where their initial dead end was placed are still visible in the GIS system, so they're still functioning. So this wouldn't be an abnormality.
Okay. Anything else, ma'am? We didn't receive the
Yes.
letter, and we're just, since you're here this evening, wanted to extend the courtesy to hear your points because we're in deliberation mode on this right now. So
Thank you. And so there's also concerns about how the town's responsibilities and the driveway, because it looks like in the proposed development plans that the driveway kind of swoops through this access area. So concerns about, the driveway pavement, is that going to meet right-of-way kind of specifications on designs and depths? Is that going to be maintained by the town? And then snow clearing in that area in the right-of-way and that driveway were all concerns. And then in terms of the subdividing of the lot to create a conservation lot, because waivers are being requested for Silver Glen, if the applicant has considered providing an easement or access off of Silver Glen as well.
okay, there's a panoply of questions there. I think I'm going to take the last one first and ask Mr. Crimmins to respond to that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the question of the land that we are anticipating donating to the town through the Conservation Commission. Conservation Commission owns I should say the town of Stoughton through its Conservation Commission owns other land that abuts that open space parcel, and presumably access to that would be from that land. It would not be through Silver Glen Road. This driveway that's being proposed is just that. It's a private driveway on private property. So as far as the first part of the question, that driveway will be maintained by the property owner. Snow removal will be the obligation of the property owner. It's not an extension of the of the way. It's a driveway coming off of the way that will be contained on private property. So I hope that answers the speaker's question.
Thank you. My follow-up question to that is the way it's laid out of the driveway, it has a very kind of swoopy motion to it. So it does appear that the driveway is kind of in the right-of-way to make a change of direction to be able to exit onto the main Silver Glen kind of cul-de-sac where that original frontage is.
Yeah, I can talk to that. So the driveway itself, so again, we are creating a right of way for frontage. A portion, as you mentioned, a small portion of that driveway as created will extend from the end of the Silver Glen cul-de-sac and then onto the property. That entire driveway will be a private driveway, even where it extends through the right of way. the construction of the roadway within that right of way will not take place. It is based on our request for the waiver from that construction. So it will be just a single family driveway. The slope of that driveway is based on our discussions with the fire department and the radius that they wanted to see on that driveway for access.
Thank you. And Chair, a follow-up question to that is, would the town need to grant an easement then for sole private use of a section of the driveway within the right-of-way?
I'll let Mr.
Based on Nicole's comment.
I'll let Mr. Crimmins answer that.
I actually think it may be the opposite. I think we would be providing the town with an easement to extend the Silver Glen right of way onto the private property.
And so would the right of way not be the town's property?
Yeah, it would be taking out, yeah, that portion would probably be donated to the town as a right of way, and non-constructed right of way.
Right. I think that's why I was going to ask you to confirm, Nicole. We are not constructing that extension. We're in effect showing it on the plan, but it will not be constructed in the field.
Correct.
So the driveway will come off of the existing right of way. Similar or not dissimilar, Craig, I was going to add to your list of other areas in town, the recent one that was done up at Ash Park Drive for the extension of Ash Park Drive and 7th Street, where I think is more analogous to this situation, where that was done just to serve 2 new homes, one on either side of the street. And in this particular case, this is being done just to serve the one home at the end of Silver Glen Road, unlike some of the other examples, such as William Kelly Road, where there's a whole additional subdivision up behind Curtis Avenue.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Barry. Yeah. That Ash Park Drive extension, that was through our Paper Street extension regulations, and because that was an existing way, here we're defining a new way, so the waiver of the subdivision rules and regs are the proper way to go about this. As far as the driveway extending through this new way, virtually all driveways extend into the right-of-way to the edge of the traveled way. So they all do that. There's no easement required to get the access to this new lot through that right-of-way. The right-of-way itself defines that access route.
Thank you.
Okay. Just to kind of summarize a couple of things here. Mr. Horsfeld, would you, for the next hearing on this matter, provide us with a recommendation from the engineering department on what you think is an equitable charge for the review fees?
Sure, we'll take a closer look at that.
Yes. And I would also mention that I would certainly want to see the plans labeled with no further building on any of the entire subdivision, labeled no buildable lot.
In the back portion, the conservation piece.
And any other lot that isn't part of that. Is there any other piece of property that's not?
Well, we have lot 2, which is adjacent to this lot, which was created through the A&R process, which is a buildable lot. So the part of this application is just the 2 lots. So it'll be the conservation piece, which will be non-buildable, and then this lot will be buildable. We can definitely add that language to a plan to show that.
In your presentation, I specifically heard that the reason why you're asking for the waivers, especially for the length and the width and the conditions of the driveway, had to do with the fact that there's no further building. So you can't have it both ways. You can't ask for a waiver that has one house as for relief because it's one house, and leave this question about the other house for later.
No, I Understood, Chairman. I apologize. You are correct. For this application, the two-lot subdivision, this portion of the subdivision would be of this application would be the only development. The remainder of the land would remain undeveloped and donated as conservation land.
That part we're not opining on that as a planning board, but I was concerned about the waiver request is directly related.
Yes, I understand. You can label that back portion, the remaining parcel of land, as unbuildable. You could do
Okay.
that.
And with that, I'm going to open it up to other members of the board, and if they have any comments on this project.
No comments this time, Mr. Chairman.
I have no comments either.
Thank you, Mr. Demuse. With that, Mr. Charbonneau, when would you like to see this continue to?
We have someone that raised their hand.
I will hear that in a minute.
Okay.
I want to finish this issue.
I'll
handle you next.
Hold on, Mr. McKinley. Answer your question, Joe. How long? It depends. If we continue them to February 11th, then basically that gives a week to get revised information together. A week before the next meeting, so that gives about 6 or 7 days for things to get revised and to get added. If Craig and the applicant think that that's possible, then we could continue this to February 11th.
Well, I understand. I know what the workload is because of the projects we have in the pipeline.
Right.
So I'm going to suggest my recommendation would be for the second meeting in February.
I think that would be fine. I think that would be fine in this case, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Council. Now we have another member of the public that wants to opine. Mr. McKinley, you now have the floor. Would you
Hi,
please?
I'm Shirley McKinley. I'm from 55 Silver Glen Road.
Okay.
The question on the driveway, it looks awfully close to the rock wall, which is the property line. Is there a buffer zone there, and will it be clear cut?
Let me see the rock wall. The rock wall is on the abutting property, I believe. It's not on this parcel.
I don't see your arrow.
John, if you pan up a little bit. Right about there. So there's a tree shown just off the edge of pavement, and that sits right in front of the rock wall. Is that correct?
Right here, Craig.
The whole rock wall is the property line, our property line.
Supposedly.
55 Silver Glen. I'm just wondering, is there a buffer zone from that rock wall to the driveway? And will it be clear cut? Will they take all the trees along the driveway?
No, that tree that was just circled will remain. I don't know if you see the blue circle on the plan.
Yeah, I do see the blue circle, but
Yeah, that exists.
but isn't that dotted line the property line for the 4-acre lot?
It is. And that's also where it meets the existing property line.
Right, and on the existing property. So I
Correct.
just want to know how far in is that driveway from the property line?
I believe it is 20. It is 20 to 30 feet off of the property line. This is, if you see the dash line, there's a 15-foot setback, and then you're another about 10, 15 feet into that setback.
Will all the trees be cut down along the driveway? Will it be clear cut?
It'll be a clear-cut driveway. It'll be a paved driveway, landscaping. There's a drainage swale that'll be adjacent to the driveway.
All right, what I'm asking is in that buffer zone between my property line, their property line, and their driveway, are those trees all going to be cut down?
I don't know the answer to that. There will be some trees cut down due to grading and installation of the driveway and the stormwater management facility.
So there won't be much.
Ms. Dunphy, I think that we're going to ask for you to show the tree cut line.
Yes.
And perhaps you can do it with a superimposed picture of the existing conditions.
Yeah, I think
Would
I
be
sent,
easy.
John, did I send you a color picture today that shows the aerial in the
Hold
background?
on. You want me to pull that up?
Yeah, if you don't mind. That kind of shows a clearer view of what's being cleared and what's not. Thanks, John. So as you can see, the lighter green will be maintain landscape and grass areas. The darker green will remain natural vegetation, wooded areas. That lighter line is the limit of disturbance for the property.
All right. So that's going to be disturbed.
Yes.
When I talked about, I understand that you've got this is an engineering rendering. It's not an actual picture of the premises.
Underneath is the aerial that I could give you. I just colored on top of it, but I could kind of tone that down so you can see what's under it as well.
I think that would be helpful to the abutter.
Sure.
All right. Thank you.
This is William McKinley,
Oh.
same address. Our concern is we've been through this before in another location in another town. And what was a nice wooded lot became a strip of bare land. So that's where our questions are coming from. If it's going to be a driveway that's approved and installed with the S-curve, it looks fairly nice. The gap between that edge of the driveway and our property line, which is now a lot of natural growth, our concern is that it stripped down, becomes a grass lawn, and therefore you no longer have a wooded lot on one side at all. It just looks like a parking lot with grass. So that's my concern.
I understand your concerns. I do understand where you're coming from. I know there's grading in there to install the drainage improvements. I can look at that area a little closer and see if there's a way to maintain, we can talk to the applicant, see if there's a way to maintain a vegetative screen between your property and the new development.
And I'm going to toss in there, Ms. Dunphy, in your analysis and discussion with the client, would you consider some sort of landscaping along that line as well? You don't have to give me an answer right now, but I just asked.
I'll talk to him. Yes.
Okay. Was that it, Mr. McKinley?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Kaiserman, just briefly, you had one other point. I'm trying to keep this to our time constraints this evening. We are not closing the public hearing, so don't worry about getting every single thing in, but I'll give you a couple minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. And the application in front of the board currently, is it just for subdividing the lot, or is it more of a site plan approval for the proposed house and driveway as
It's
well?
just a subdivision.
Exactly.
And so will this project be coming, Silver Glen House and the two Pond View houses be coming in front of the planning board for approval of the house location and development?
No.
Mr. Charbonneau, you want to answer that?
Yeah. Michelle, no, that doesn't happen, because what happens is when they approve subdivision like this, I mean, this is a situation where the applicant is showing the location of the house, but that doesn't always happen. They don't have to show the location of the house, but in this case, where obviously they're looking for a waiver and coming off a cul-de-sac, they're looking for a waiver and the showing the driveway. They are showing the location of the house, but they will have to go before the building. They will go to the building department for their building permits, but no, they won't come back before the planning board. This public hearing will basically approve the project, and that will be it for the planning board until they go for a building permit for the home.
And what about, I know this is not in front of the board, but for clarifying, one of the lots on Pond View that's also being developed as part of this kind of 3-house division, it seems that the house does not comply with setback regulations.
That's
so-
another issue that'll be before the zoning board after conservation.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And you're always free. That's in the jurisdiction of the building commissioner. So that can be raised with him as well.
Absolutely.
I'd like to point out too that the site design itself, the driveway, the house location, the drainage and the swales and everything that go along with it will be reviewed as a part of the notice of intent application with the Conservation Commission, since this is located so closely to potential vernal pools and bordering vegetated wetlands.
Absolutely. So Michelle, you should also get if you were in a butter to this for this hearing, you should also get notification, I believe, Nicole, for the conservation hearings as well.
I was at the conservation hearing.
I was, thank you.
There,
Okay,
we
great.
Okay, with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to continue this matter until the 25th of February.
7.
Motion to continue.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Demuse. Roll call vote. The chair votes yes. Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Demuse?
Yes.
We'll see you on the 25th of February at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Charbonneau, would you load up while I'm introducing the project, the next one coming up? Would you load the legal notice?
Yes. Give me just 1 second, please. There it is, Joe. Can you see it?
Yes, I do. I'm going to need a motion to open up the hearing on 3 Porter Street. I'm going to short the description because I'm going to read it in a minute.
So made.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. Chair votes yes. Unanimous. The public notice. A public hearing will be held by remote participation on Thursday, January 28, 2021 at 7 p.m. on the petition of the property owner Kim Lee Realty Trust, LLC, 312 Tosca Drive, Stoughton, Mass. 02072, and the applicant BLEE LLC, 25th 10th Street, Stoughton, Mass. 02072, represented by Attorney Barry R. Crimmins, 909 Washington Street, Stoughton, Mass. 02072, for a special permit under section 3.1.4 of the zoning bylaws for a mixed-use building and site plan approval pursuant to 10.6 of the zoning bylaws for a property located at 3 Porter Street, further identified on Assessor's Plan number 54, Lot 109. The meeting will be recorded and rebroadcast by Stoughton Media Access Corporation. To participate, call cell phone number 617-675-4444 and enter PIN 4448-277-487-1042 hashtag. To participate via Google Hangouts, please follow this link, meet.google.com/YBY-KYZXH-MMF. You can copy and paste this link into your web browser. In the event that these measures are unsuccessful or inconvenient, a recording of the meeting transcript or other comprehensive record of the proceeding will be posted on the town's website and/or Stoughton Media Access Corporation as soon as possible after the meeting. The site plans can be viewed at the office of the Stoughton Planning Board, second floor, Engineering Department, Town Hall, 10 Pearl Street, Stoughton, Mass. during normal business hours by appointment only per the town manager's policy. The petitioner and/or his representative or any other person is desiring to be heard in this matter should appear at the time and place designated. Stoughton Planning Board, published in the Stoughton Journals. Could you move the notice up, Mr. Charbonneau? Thank you. Town of Stoughton Planning Board, Joseph O. Scardino, Chairperson, published in the Journal Sun issues of January 13th, 2021 and January 20th, 2021. Mr. Charbonneau, before we ask for the applicant, I understand that a condition precedent to this hearing has been addressed. Is that my information correct? You're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, it is correct, Mr. Chairman. It was discovered going into this public hearing recently that there was some taxes owed on the property and that those needed to be brought up to date for this public hearing to go forward. Well, Attorney Crimmins forwarded me an email earlier this evening, approximately 4 hours ago, with scanned receipts from the treasurer collector that the taxes on this property have been brought up to date, so we can continue with the public hearing tonight.
And with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Crimmins to, on behalf of his client, to present the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board. Again, for the record, Attorney Barry R. Crimmins of 909 Washington Street in Stoughton, here on behalf of the applicant, which is Blee, B-L-E-E LLC of 25 10th Street here in Stoughton. Unfortunately, my client could not be here tonight, nor could our engineer. So I am going to be flying solo, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and of course, I just want to sort of reiterate the issue that I raised before. This is a special permit application for a mixed-use development, and it's also requesting waivers relative to the required parking, which is also in the form of a special permit, both of which would require a vote of 4 members of the board. So certainly the members would not be able to close tonight's meeting or to vote on the applications. But I would still like to go forward, make a brief presentation to the board, and address probably what is the main issue of this application, which is the requested parking waivers. The site plan that you see in front of you is a plan prepared by Paul Broadmerkel of Site Design Professionals. It was really prepared in conjunction with some utility work being done out in the street. The issue that makes this application somewhat unique, although certainly not something the board hasn't dealt with previously, that I'll mention in a moment, is what we have is an existing building on an existing lot where we're not proposing any exterior changes to the building or any changes to the lot. We are very limited on what we can do here due to the existing conditions. The members, I'm sure, are familiar with the property. As you're looking at this site plan, you've got the post office parking lot to the left. You've got the MBTA parking lot to the right. And then again, as you can see across the street is the property at the corner of Rose Street, which was also developed as a mixed-use development several years ago. So unlike some of you, unlike, for instance, your first hearing tonight, Mr. Conley's hearing for that mixed-use development where the prior structure is being demolished and a new building is going up. Here we've got an existing building that we're not changing, an existing site that we're not changing. The proposal is for a mixed-use development that would have commercial space on the first floor. And then there are 2 floors above that commercial space. On the second floor, there would be 2 2-bedroom units. And on the third floor, there would be 1 2-bedroom unit for a total of 3 2-bedroom units. Unfortunately, our bylaw, our current zoning bylaw, which the members are certainly acquainted with, and the issue I'm going to raise is certainly acquainted with, we have a lot of areas of the bylaw that are somewhat antiquated, in one of which that often comes up and has been a bit of a problem and has thwarted a lot of proposed developments. And once again, I use the Conley example, is our parking regulations. These parking regulations have not been updated in some period of time, and I think we would all agree that they really don't reflect the current market conditions. When you think of this property and you think of where it's located, and you think of things like transit-oriented development, where a property such as this would most likely attract a single individual who is looking to commute into Boston, taking the train, or perhaps a couple, where there really isn't the need for the amount of parking that this bylaw would require. It's my understanding the board, in its current workings with a consultant for the downtown area, in fact, is looking at this very issue. And if my information is correct, I guess there's been some discussion about reducing the parking requirements. Unfortunately, in our town, as in other towns, that requires town meeting approval. And I don't know if there are plans to have that on the warrant for the annual town meeting, or perhaps not till a special town meeting that may get called for in the fall. The difficulty for my client here is that he does not own the property. He has a purchase and sales agreement to purchase the property. He's had it under agreement for some period of time as we've gone through the process of the permitting, and we're not sure if the seller is going to be willing to wait until the spring or the fall until these changes may occur. That being said, um, there is the provision in the current bylaw, as you all know, to allow for a waiver of the parking requirements by special permit when, as it says in the bylaw, when no substantial detriment will occur. That's the standard of review in reviewing a request for a waiver of the parking requirements. I mentioned the fact that this is not unlike another property that the board had a couple of years ago. Members Scardino and Kelly will probably remember the property at 732 Washington Street on the other side of the center. If you recall, that property was purchased by Tina Tang, the former owner of Shangdu Restaurant, and we had a very similar situation there, where she only had 2 parking spaces on site, and she needed a waiver for the parking that was required under the bylaw that the board was willing to grant. Here, similarly, as I said, the site is occupied almost entirely by the existing building. There's little, if anything, frankly, that we can do about that. We can't move the building. We can't reduce the footprint of the building. It is what it is. But the other thing I would ask the board to take notice of is the amount of parking in this area. And I say that again, simply to acknowledge that should the board be willing to grant the requested waiver for parking, um, I don't see this as a practical matter as being a particular problem, because once again, I think our anticipated marketplace for prospective tenants of this property, as I mentioned, most likely are not going to need a lot of parking, and to the extent that they do, there's more than ample parking along the existing roadways in this area. Porter Street, the train station, and other areas around here. Let me address the elephant in the room, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. Under the current bylaw, the bylaw for 3 two-bedroom units, the bylaw says for a two-bedroom unit, you have to have um, 3 parking spaces. So for 3 two-bedroom units, the bylaw would require that we have 9 parking spaces. We can only provide 2 on site. Now somebody might say, "Oh my God, you're asking for a waiver of 7 parking spaces. That's unbelievable. That's too high of a number." Um, the number is simply dictated by what the current bylaw requires and what we're able to provide on site. And right now, today, we're not able to do anything about either of those 2 issues. We cannot change the bylaw, although I hope it will be down the road, and we cannot change the site. What I'm really asking the board to do is to, again, take notice of the area, take notice of the location, take notice of the existing conditions, and take notice of the fact that you apparently, by your own current work with your consultant, have apparently acknowledged or recognized the fact that the bylaw and the parking requirements need revision. And you've seen it in real life applications that have come before you previously, and the problems with being able to develop the downtown the way the Schmood originally anticipated that it would be with mixed-use development, because of, again, an antiquated requirement for parking. I'd also like to add the fact that, and I think I shared this with the chairman and Mr. Charbonneau recently, the recent legislation passed by Governor Baker for downtown development, not downtown, but development in areas in a community that have train stations such as ours, that will require the towns create a zone where multifamily housing is allowed as of right. And that legislation will require the towns create such an area within a certain period of time, or else potentially risk losing funding through the state. So it's put sort of the carrot and the stick in front of the communities to try to do something in a timely fashion. And I trust the planning board in its capacity will look to do that as quickly as possible. So what we're really asking the board to do is kind of look down the road, so to speak, see that these changes are coming, and take advantage of the opportunity that you would have with this particular project to allow for a modest mixed-use development to happen in the town ahead of when these zoning amendments happen. It really comes down to the waivers are critical to the success of this project moving forward. I actually went.
Mr. Chairperson, I hate to interrupt, Barry, but we're already behind schedule.
All right, Mr. Charbonneau, I'm going to ask Mr. Crimmins, we've got a lot of discussion with the board.
I will wrap up. I don't think I've taken my 30 minutes yet, but let me.
Well, 30 minutes is for the entire public hearing, actually. So.
Okay, so let me wrap up, if I may, and I appreciate the board's indulgence with this final point. I went through a series of options. Say, okay, well, what if you reduce the number of bedrooms? What if you reduce the number of units? The best we come out with is a situation, and you could, if you were to do the math, you could see it yourself. If we reduce it to two bedrooms and one bed, et cetera, it still comes down to needing a waiver, because at best, what we come down to is needing 3 parking spaces, and we only have 1. So whether it's 3 or whether it's 9, the fact of the matter remains that we still only have the 2 parking spaces on the site that we have, and we simply can't do anything about that. So what I'm asking the board tonight, and really all I wanted to discuss tonight, is to get a sense of the board, if the board would consider the parking waiver. Because if not, there's really not much sense in spending any more of my client's time and money in proceeding with this. But hopefully, if the board is willing to look at this and look at it with the foresight that I alluded to, I think you can see a project that can be up and running in short order, because the infrastructure is already there. The shell is already there, the building's there, and it's only going to require interior renovations. So with that, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I thank you for your consideration. I thank you for your indulgence, and be happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
From the board, Mr. Kelly, I noticed you gave me the high sign, so why don't you go ahead and go
Thank you,
first.
Mr. Scardino. Just to start off, Mr. Crimmins, you know the political issues and a lot of the stuff that's going around this town for what's happened for, over the last several years dealing with the parking. I would love to see this building get, somehow get used with some sort of mixed use or something along those lines. That would be great. It's an area of town that needs to get fixed up, and I welcome any developer into it. However, we are looking at parking down the road, but even with the new parking that we're looking at would not bring down the parking levels to the levels that you're asking for with this building. We've held up several projects over the last couple of years, namely the biggest one, Malcolm Parsons, which is probably the most highly visible project in town, specifically over parking issues. Under the smooth regulations, it gives you the right to be able to get off-site parking for this type of a project. So if you are applying under the smooth, then you could do that off-site parking. So that gives you your option to be able to do that to pick up the additional parking spaces. I don't believe that we could, as a board, in any way that we've been working with anything, to be able to say that we're going to be able to cut down to 2 parking spaces for the amount of units that you're looking into. So going forward, that hurdle, I don't believe I could honestly vote for in the vein of where we've been going forward with all the other projects in town. I think we'll be 100% against what we've done, and also not even in line with what we were asking to do in the future zoning changes. So I really have trouble with that part of the project to be able to go forward with it, and that's where I'm at right now.
Could I just respond very quickly? Unfortunately,
Sure.
Dan, this project is not eligible to go forward under the schmoo because of the size of the lot. That's another area that.
So that's what I asked. That's why I asked if you were going forward to the smooth. So you did mention the smooth. That's why I didn't realize whether you were or you weren't going through under the smooth. So if it's not under the smooth, then you're right. You're into a parking situation. So what is the zoning of this particular lot then?
It's still the central business district. And
okay.
So the parking requirement is still the same.
No, I realize that. So I think I think if we were to try to give some sort of a waiver for this project, I think the only way we would walk that line would be for the applicant to try to ask us to get off-site parking, which, we might be able to work along something along those lines, but to say that we're going to waive all of that parking, I don't believe this board could actually do that in the, atmosphere, and also with what we're trying to do for that downtown area.
Mr. Demuse, I'd like to hear from Mr. Demuse, and then if comment on both. We're still on the same subject, Mr. Crimmins, so you'll have plenty of time. Mr. Demuse?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Years ago, that was America's Restaurant, and cars would park in the train station parking lot because the majority of their business was in the evenings. The area was open. Do we have any kind of resident parking stickers? Because if there were cars, residents that needed to park there, more than likely they're going to park at night and they're going to park on the weekends. Have we looked into that angle to help this parking situation? Because
Mr. Demuse, we've asked about that, and as of right now, I don't believe the town has any type of program in place with resident parking stickers. It's actually one of the things that the town has looked at, but I don't think it's actually gone forward with that.
Because I think that would be a big plus for something like this,
Well, so would voting a bylaw in that reduced the parking. And the problem is that we would be acting almost an abuse of discretion with respect to that. And compounding this issue of parking is the issue, and it's a corollary issue, is I was looking at the plans, and let's look at one of the parking spaces that's been proposed next to the building. Now, it's barely 1 foot off the staircase. That's the parking space that's contiguous to the side of the building. So that's shown as a regulation parking space of 9 feet. Now, most people would park head in, and you couldn't open up your car door with a 1 foot clearance and get out of the car. This all causes another problem because if you try to draw another 9-foot parking space next to it, so if you move that out, you barely have enough room for a plow to get back in there. And I don't know where the snow is going to go from this site, because you've got to clear that out so that the driver who's parking in the back, parallel to the back side of the building, would be able to get out in a snowstorm, and there's no snow storage shown on the plans. So it's a corollary issue with the parking, that because the parking is so challenged, that even the 2 spaces are going to be a problem in the winter. Mr. Crimmins, now if you briefly respond to any of that, you're free to do so.
No, I mean, the conditions are the conditions, and there's nothing we can do about them. But unless the board is willing to, entertain the waiver, then this building will continue to sit vacant. That's as I said, we're asking the board to perhaps step outside the box a bit. Take a look at this. It's, you use the analogy to Mr. Conley's project. Mr. Conley owned property on Rose Street where he was able to provide a satellite lot. This individual does not. It's a shame when, all of us who know the downtown area, we hear it all the time. We hear it from the selectmen. We don't have a parking problem in town. We have plenty of parking. But when you look at it on a site-by-site basis such as this, and you try to apply an antiquated bylaw, this is the problem you run up against.
And Barry, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, and it's actually one of the things that we're struggling with the downtown zoning that we're trying to recreate, is how much can we reduce the parking and still have it, have the town allow us to be able to do that. And my personal opinion is that we should be able to do a project like this as by right without having these types of issues coming into town. However, there is a lot of resistance in this town to being able to reduce the parking in this area. Why it is, I don't know. I don't disagree. Down in the future, we should be reducing parking because people are going to use less and less vehicles. However, that's not where we are with this town right now. It's not where our zoning bylaw is. I would love to change it, but I can't get it to change that far. I would love to see this building. It's been sitting there for years this way, and this is a perfect type of use for that building. We need to find a way to get the parking to work. I don't see being allowed 2 units, 2 cars of parking for that building. That's what. And Barry, the other thing is, you made a statement that these were going to be, single people living in here. However, you're proposing a bunch of 2-bedroom units. So therefore, that's not single people living in these. Those are 2-bedroom units. You're going to have more than, 2. You have more than 1 person living in it.
Okay, but you may have a couple. In this day and age of COVID, people are converting bedrooms to home offices. I mean, a 2-bedroom is just hitting a certain price point in the marketplace that a 1-bedroom does not. But as far as the question of parking, there isn't a parking problem because there's plenty of parking in the area. The only parking problem is we can't fit the required number of spaces on the site. And why?
No, I know that, but you can't. We can't in this town, and it's been very well laid out on past projects, is to use public parking for private development, and that's been a huge issue in this town, and it's been shot down on more than 1 occasion. And I think this board would be remiss to not open our eyes and see that that's what has been the pushback. So to say that we're going to use public parking for private property, for private developers, that's where the issue is. I don't disagree there's parking there, Barry. I'm not arguing that point. The issue is the use of public parking for private work.
But this isn't a new development. This is existing non-conforming. I mean, something's got to give somewhere, or else, like Barry says, this property is going to sit vacant, and that doesn't do us any good.
No, Paul, you're exactly right. It doesn't do us any good. And I really welcome to what you're saying, but I don't know how to go forward with it the way that we're asking right now. There's got to be, maybe there's something else we got to come up with. We just got to think about it a little bit.
Well, that's why I was leaning towards resident stickers, because when it was a restaurant years ago, people would just park in the train station parking lot, no problem. Because, like I said, it was evenings, weekends, when the
right. But the other thing you got to realize too is, if with the way people are working, and Barry made a good point, is people are working from home right now more and more, so these cars aren't going to be just there in the evenings or the weekends, they're gonna be there all day long.
True, but if it's a, you know, not a substantial amount of cars with resident stickers, I mean, I'm just trying to think outside the box here a little, because this is a tough situation.
Mr. Charbonneau would like to speak, so I'm going to let him.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so to the point of the discussion that's been happening, the draft regulations are about to be rolled out to the public here within the next few weeks or so. We're going to be having a public forum sometime in February, the first one. So to Barry's point and to Dan's point, if the parking regulations as they're currently proposed in the draft regulations are favorably received, I do believe there's a chance that this project, the parking regulations would really help this project quite a bit under the new regulations. The problem we have now is we don't know how people are going to react to these draft regulations. They may react favorably, they may love them, and that would benefit this project quite a bit. Or they may not like them, and we may have to modify them a little bit. So there is a good chance that the new regulations would help a project such as this, but when we can't say that for sure at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Charbonneau. And the other thing I would inform Mr. Crimmins of is that Mr. Kelly and myself have spent a great deal of time on these bylaws with respect to dimensional rules. And his point before about not being able to use the schmood because of the lot size under our, what we're looking at right now is changing that minimum because of the inventory that we've reviewed in the square and found out what the average size of the lots are. So that's going to be another issue thrown on the table. So this project would become more feasible with respect to a change in the lot size. So it could come in the SCD, and the footprint is being considered to be in the district that would allow it to be part of the new bylaw area. So I think that the board, in summarizing, the planner, at least myself and Mr. Kelly, and to some extent Mr. Demuse, appear to say that that's probably your best course of action other than securing a long-term parking agreement with an abutter, Mr. Kelly, who owns that big parking lot. And barring that, I can't see, I certainly couldn't vote for a waiver of that magnitude.
So, so that being said, Mr. Chairman, I know we don't have the proper voting quorum present tonight. So it may be wise to continue this public hearing to a future date, and so we can have the proper voting quorum to continue this discussion. As Mr. Crimmins mentioned, you know, Mr. Garland is allowed to miss one public hearing on this project and still vote at the end. So I think at this point it might be wise to continue it to a future date and continue the discussion.
Well, the only thing I can see is that two of us have already, I just want to put things in perspective and not put votes in people's mouths, but I've certainly listened to Mr. Kelly, and I've know what the way I feel about it. And for the sake of a discussion, if Mr. Demuse would vote in favor of the waiver and Mr. Garland would vote in favor of the waiver, we wouldn't have the necessary 4 votes.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, before you try to anticipate how folks are going to vote, I think Mr. Charbonneau's suggestion makes sense if we could continue this hearing, because quite frankly, although we did speak to a couple of people in the area, because obviously I recognize what the issue is here. And we pursued avenues to try to see if we could enter into a parking agreement with somebody that may address the issue that the members have mentioned tonight. If we were to be successful in entering into such an agreement that we could bring back to the board, you would still be asked to make the waiver. But then presumably if we have the parking agreement, it would address the concerns, I think, that I've heard tonight from the members.
Yes, we had at town meeting, one of the articles was about that, having a signed agreement off-site for parking, which I thought was going to be difficult to get anyway. But if you come here with that, Barry, that changes the whole scenario.
Right. So with that, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I request we're not going to resolve this in 2 weeks' time, but in order to keep things on the radar, and since I'm going to be back on the 25th anyways, perhaps we could continue this to the 25th of February. By then, I'm probably going to have a pretty good idea on whether or not we're going to be able to find something. And then, as I said, in the interest of not spending any more of my client's time and money, we'll either have to make a decision to proceed or not to proceed at that point.
Mr. Charbonneau, what our keeper of the
Yeah,
agenda-
right. Yeah, I was just about to mention that, Joe. Thank you. We do want to be careful because now we're continuing everything to the 25th. So now we're kind of overloading the meeting later in the month. I mean, we do right now the only public hearing we have on for the 11th is 19 Camden Street, the continued public hearing. We have a public hearing starting up on the 25th for 1580 Turnpike Street. We now have the continued public hearing for the 2-lot subdivision. Now we're going to have the continued hearing for this. So we're starting to get overloaded a little bit on the second meeting of the 25th, on the second meeting of February. So we want to be careful with that.
And I see a continuation based on the time this evening, and not wanting to give the downtown zoning short shrift of continuing a discussion on that as well. I don't know how much we're going to be able to get in this evening on that. So, Mr. Crimmins, I'm inclined to extend it to the 25th, and I'm going to ask you to please keep in touch. If it looks like it's not, or you need more, or you see you're part of the way down the discussions for an agreement that you think may be acceptable, then get back to us and we'll work accordingly. But we're willing to, I'm willing to take the risk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the only way, as I mentioned, that we would be able to go forward on the 25th would be if we had an agreement in hand. So if the board would consider extending to that date, and I'll keep Mr. Charbonneau posted as to our status. And if we don't have it, we can either request a further continuance or request a withdrawal at that point.
Okay, sir.
Okay,
With
great.
that, I'm going to entertain a motion to continue this public hearing until the 25th of February at 7 o'clock. Can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And the chair votes yes, so it's unanimous.
Okay.
See you on the.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
So far, Mr. Crimmins. Okay, with that, I'm going to need a motion to open up the continued public hearing of Milton Real Properties of Massachusetts LLC, 100 Corey Drive, Milford, Mass. 01757, represented by Attorney Barry R. Crimmins, 909 Washington Street, Stoughton, Mass. 02072, and the property owner J.F. White Contracting Company, 56 Old Page Street, Stoughton, Mass. 02072 for site plan approval under section 10.6 site plan approval and special permits under 6.2.4 signs permitted in the I district and section 6.2.6 additional sign regulations and section 6.2.7 special permit of the Stoughton zoning bylaws, all for the property located at 207 Page Street, further identified on Assessors Plan number 94, Lot 43. First, I'd like to hear from Mr. Charbonneau. Excuse me.
Did you open the hearing, Mr. Chairman?
I did. Oh, you have. I'm sorry, we didn't take a vote on that. Can I have a motion to that effect?
So made. Oh, second.
Thank you. And the chair votes yes. So now we're officially open. Thank you, Mr. Crimmins. Mr. Horsfeld, well, you want to give us the status of this matter?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I'd like to just start off by saying that the site plans have made a lot of progress since they were last before you. We've been working alongside with Colby Company Engineering, and I'd like to say that I'm quite surprised at how quickly they're able to turn revisions around and update the plans, and they've done a good job at doing that. So I've put forth a revised technical review letter that should have been distributed to the board. It's much shorter than the original letter, and there's only a few outstanding issues that remain. We actually just received revised plans. So I think the site plans that the board has are latest revised the January 7th. And we just more recently have a updated set. I think it was from the 25th that incorporated some drainage revisions. We had a site inspection with Adam Thibodeau from Colby Companies. We located some existing drainage on site, and they quickly updated the plans and drainage calculations, got those over to us. So we've had a chance to look at them, and we're satisfied with what they've come up with for the drainage design for the site. The review letter has a couple of things that need to be revised. One item being we need some added guardrail around the northern northeast corner of the rear parking lot. There's an existing and proposed slope in that area that would certainly warrant a guardrail in that location. The drainage design actually lacks a little bit of recharge to the groundwater, part of the DEP stormwater management requirements. Although this site is comprised of C&D soils mostly, there is a small portion of A soils, and the C&D soils, it is encouraged that we provide any sort of recharge as possible. I had suggested in my technical review letter that the engineers explore the opportunity to add that to a grass swale that's located along the toe of the proposed slope on the southeast portion of the site. So they could achieve some level of recharge in that swale with a perforated pipe and stone in that system. They have some storm inlets and landscape inlets in that swale as it is. I think that would be a good area to comply with that regulation from DEP. And then part of the revision to the drainage is one of the big contentions that we had was how the off-site drainage flowed through the site. And we were able to locate the existing drainage system. The applicant's proposing to remove and replace that entire system. So they're going to reroute it through the site, and there'll be a new point of discharge to a new head wall on the existing slope near the wetland line on the northern property line. We're requesting that the riprap apron that's proposed by the applicant in that location, that be extended down to the toe of the slope, so the slope continues beyond where they're showing their proposed riprap apron to end. We'd like to ensure that that slope does not get eroded by the existing drainage. It's a pretty large pipe, a 24-inch diameter pipe that will be discharging in that location. So it'll be a significant amount of water. The technical review letter also had several recommended conditions of approval. If the board gets to that point where they are entertaining approval of this project, a few of those items are contingent upon other approvals, one being an order of condition issued by the Conservation Commission, another being final design plans for the sewer design, which would be forthcoming. It's all spelled out in the technical review letter. So I think that pretty much sums up where we're at.
Thank you, Mr. Horsfeld. And as you know, and as we reminded council earlier, this board has a practice of, especially in a project with this impactful, of not closing its public hearing until the Concom has chimed in. And since I believe, have you had one meeting with the Concom yet, Mr. Crimmins?
We have, scheduled to be back before them next week. We were supposed to be before them last week, but unfortunately that meeting was canceled at the last minute. So we were not able to present to them last week, but we intend to present to them next week. You know,
Go ahead.
I just want to mention that, well, two things. One, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Craig for his efforts in working with us and our engineering team on this. He's been very helpful, as has the rest of the engineering department and Mr. Conlon. We expect to get a rather speedy approval from the Concom, and I'll tell you why. All of this work is buffer zone work. There is no work within the actual wetlands, so we would expect a speedy approval from the Concom, and we would like to, if I may use the expression, as we said, we know we can't close the hearing tonight, but we would like to keep this on a fast track if at all possible. This is a major project. It has a lot of benchmarks in its process that have to be met by us and our client, and it's very important for us to be able to keep this moving forward as expeditiously as possible. As I said, the staff has been great to date. The board has been great in working with us as well. And so with that said, we just want to, the board to keep in mind that we have certain dates we have to meet, and it's very important for us to keep this moving as quickly as possible.
Well, I just want to remind you, Mr. Crimmins, that that right now you're looking at I know what you're saying. The board has received a 7-page comment letter from the Concom, and frankly, that knowing the scope of the project could have been started in October, or about the same time that you filed with us. So I want to put this in a proper time perspective here. We're cognizant, I think Mr. Kelly stated the general feeling of the board on this project at the very first hearing. So let's get on with some of the matters that, by the way, are still outstanding. I've said in our meeting with the staff from the applicant about the landscaping issues. I've looked at the recent set of plans, the January 7th plans. I asked for taller trees and more robust shrubbery. I mentioned that, and I still see the plans are reflecting miniature trees, given the scope of this project. Just to give some perspective, the Malcolm Parsons parking lot has trees 10 to 12 feet tall, and there's no structures there. Here we have a 6-acre parcel with a 2+ story building, and we see trees that are 6 to 8 feet tall. And I've said this more than once, and I'm a little disappointed not to see that change on this set of plans. Now, in addition to that, Mr. Charbonneau and I made a site visit the other day to look at the, as you recall, I raised the question of the tree cutting along and the natural buffer along the side of the abutter at 245 Page Street. And I was going to ask Mr. Charbonneau to put that part of the plan that shows the swale, the driveway, as well as the abutter, that page of the plan up.
Hold on, Joe, let me pull that up.
Sure.
So you can continue talking. It's going to take me a minute to find it.
Yeah, we looked at the site, and we're happy to see that you're going to remove that fence on Page Street, so that you have a direct sight of view to the equipment. But in that corner, where on the other side of the driveway, there is a rusty, rambling chain link fence with rotted wood slats in it that faces the abutter. And that combined with, I think there's 3 or 4 trees that were added, but I don't see at one point the swale of the driveway almost touches the corner of the property. And so we're going to request a PVC fence that goes on on the abutter side. That's not quite the plan I'm looking for, Mr. Charbonneau.
Okay,
I
which
want
one are you looking for, Joe?
the one with the driveway that shows the
Right there?
yes, that will do.
Okay, what do you want me to zoom in on?
The area up near the abutter that looks like a quarter of a watermelon.
Yep.
Okay. Now there aren't the end of the tree line is that scalloped area. That's the line of work. I'm sorry. I think that's the end of the work. But what's left really as far as a natural buffer is scrub. There are a few trees in there that look like they're going to go. Yeah, see the area up near the corner of the property, the 90? That's pretty close up in there. And I can't see there's not going to be any natural buffer at that point. So frankly, there should be an 8-foot tall PVC fence that runs from the corner of the Page Street along the property line to the 90 and across the back of his property. I don't see much natural buffer being left with respect to the construction of that driveway. So those are the points. Those are the 2 points. And in addition, I mentioned that the only color I see is, I believe, blue. There's some blue shrubbery. And I think that some of those trees could be at least a red-leafed type tree to spec out so that we get some color on that site other than just green. And those are my comments. Anybody else from the board want to pipe in?
So, I'm sorry. So going back to the last meeting we had, Mr. Crimmins, we spoke about the sign heights around going along 24, and you were going to get us an average or what other signs that we've got approved in Stoughton along that area. Has any of that come up?
Yes, I provided that.
Actually, hold on, Barry, let me pull that up. Does it come in?
When did that come in, Mr. Charbonneau?
I'm going to have to look. Hold on.
I can answer Mr. Kelly's question. It's a simple enough question.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I'm having trouble finding that. I think that came in within the last couple of days. Oh, there it is. It came in yesterday.
Okay, well, we'd asked for all this material in at least a week beforehand, so.
You asked me to provide information on the height of the target sign, and it's a very simple.
We said all the signs along that area.
No, you didn't.
Yes, we did.
You asked for the target sign, but I can provide the information on the target sign and the BJ sign, both of which I was involved with. The height of the target sign is 127 feet. It got a variance of 97 feet. The surface area of that sign is 1,024 square feet. It got a variance of 874 feet. By contrast, our sign is only 60 feet and only has a surface area of 144 square feet. The sign across the street at BJ's that I was also involved with, that got a variance several years ago for the height, a variance of 50 feet for a total height of 80 feet, as well as some other variances relative to setbacks that aren't really germane to this. So our sign, by comparison, is considerably smaller and considerably lower than the other signs in that area.
Thank you. The other questions, I mean, I think Mr. Scardino brought it up, was a lot to do with the Concom and the wetlands areas, and I would like to see what's coming out of the Concom at that point, which I believe will be, settled fairly easily. Like you said, Mr. Crimmins, I don't believe there's going to be any major things, because you are running along the border of the wetlands, and I think the Concom will be acceptable to that. But I'm not going to speak for that board. I just think that's what you're doing there is not that adverse in my mind. But that being said, I think if we follow along, we don't get that. We wait for the Concom approval on that part of it. The signage issue, I still am remiss about giving out that type of a thing. And I was not part of the board when those other signs were given out, and I'm only one vote. So maybe there's enough votes to be able to handle that. So that's all.
Well,
Thank you.
Unfortunately, on that point, there will not be unless we wait till Mr. Carver gets back, because it's a special permit.
Oh, that's a special permit issue? Okay.
Requires a 4/5 vote, so.
Okay.
With that, what's the date of your next Concom hearing, Mr. Crimmins?
That would be next week, Mr. Chairman, February 4th. So I think if the board is looking at a continuation of tonight's hearing, we would request that we be continued to the meeting of February 25th. That way we will have had 2 more opportunities, if necessary, to be in front of the Concom, at which point we well anticipate that we will have finished with the Concom by then, and then could come back to this board. But before you do, and I would like to just make sure we have all the concerns of this board down so that we can address them between now and the next meeting.
In the interim, you're free to contact Mr. Charbonneau, and if you want some sort of a heads up as to where you are with the changes, I'd be happy to look at something in the interim.
Well, what I mean is, you mentioned, I believe, 2 items, one relative to landscaping, another relative to a fence along the abutters property. And then Mr. Kelly voiced his concern about the height of the sign. I don't know if either of you two or Mr. Demuse have any other comments that you'd like to make, that you would like us to address between now and the next meeting, other than the comments in Mr. Horsfall's technical review memo.
I have no further comments.
Okay, I think you have the panoply of issues, Mr. Crimmins.
So we're just down from the board members. We're just down to those 2 items from the chairman and Mr. Kelly's concern about the sign waivers. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, but I may be incorrect.
And obviously, Mr. Garland may have other questions or concerns, but I just want to make sure we walk away from tonight's meeting with a clear understanding about what the board is asking us to do.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may ask, in the meantime, since the next public hearing is approximately 1 month away, and there's a chance that they may be completed with the Conservation Commission, does the board authorize me to begin working on a decision on this project at this point?
I still think I'd like to be optimistic, but again, if we were further along here, the concerns I have is that, there's, as Mr. Horsfall says, there's a few things here and there with his situation, and I had wished that the landscaping was further along, since we've had several meetings about this particular issue. So I think that we have to play this one by ear and see what comes in, what communications are sent to the planning department from the applicant. And we can always, that's not since we have to vote the decision, you can always prepare something and it can always be added to or changed at the time of which we're going to render that. So you can guide your actions accordingly.
And we appreciate that offer by Mr. Charbonneau, and that's part of the reason I asked the question I asked, that I think that our understanding is, as long as we address the comments in Mr. Horsfall's memo, as well as the comments made by the members tonight, that in a draft decision reflects that, then so long as we provide that necessary information to the board, I would hope and think that the board would be in a position to vote on an approval at that meeting on February 25th.
And Mr. Crimmins, just so I understand, the only special permit you're asking for has to do with the sign regulations, correct?
Correct. Site plan approval is
Site plan approval is just regular, but the only special permit is the sign regulations.
correct.
And really, the sign regulation has to do with both size and the height of the billboard sign.
Correct. It's not a billboard sign, but I know what
The
yes.
roadway sign, I'm sorry.
Yep.
The pole sign.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to continue this matter until the 25th of February. Can I have that
Mr.
motion?
Chairman, Mr. Farron has his hand up. I'm not sure if he has a comment.
I have, I only, that's right, excuse me. You recognize Mr. Farron?
Thank you. Brad Farron, representing Milton Cat, the applicant in this project. And I did want to make a couple comments listening to what's going on tonight. And quite honestly, I want to say thank you to Craig and John for what they have done. And Mr. Chair, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, I heard your comments about landscaping. And I think, as I told you personally, and as we go through this, Milton Cat wants to come to town to be a resident for a long time. I think it's also fair to recognize that this project is addressing, this storm drainage system that Craig mentioned that we found, and I got $250,000 storm drainage piece that we're willing to pick up and clean up on the town's behalf. And we're talking about easements and other things that folks have known has been an issue for a long time, and it hasn't been addressed. And we're looking at doing that as part of being partners. On the Concom piece, just had some conversations today with Mark Tisdale, and we did hear back from Mr. Conlon, and there's some concerns about the fill that was put in, and I've turned those over to JF White, because I got to make it really clear. We have not purchased this property. We're looking to see if it's feasible for us to be there. And things like the signage and adding trees, whatever, adds those costs. And I'm looking at this. So we're making a decision on whether this is a viable project for us. And
Yes,
so when I hear you say you're disappointed or that we didn't address, we're looking at this project in its entirety. And I just want everyone to know that, we're appreciative of the things going forward, but we're also spending a great amount of energy and dollars to bring it forward, but it's not a done deal. And I appreciate everyone moving things along and doing that. But sometimes I feel like there's a little bit of loading on, and I got to assess that, and I got to make a recommendation on whether Stoughton is where we need to be. And I just wanted to put all those cards on the table for everybody to hear that piece of it. We're committed. I've already spent a lot of money and want to continue on, because I think would be a good value and asset to the community, and it's a great place to be.
And I just would like to say that we talked about this, sir, from the meeting in Town Hall. The only thing that's a recent addition, we've been, throughout the public hearing process, we've been concerned about the adjoining property. It's a residential property. It's a bit of an anomaly on the street, but it is an existing property and a neighbor. And frankly, their consideration with respect to buffers and everything else have been brought up at every single hearing. You seem to imply by your comments that this was some sort of a last-minute surprise. I just want to inform you that this is totally consistent with the discussion that we've had with you, and especially the landscaping. We talked about that months ago. So again, I want to put things in appropriate context. Nobody is bringing up anything that's out of the ordinary. With respect to the engineering requirements on the drain, that's out of the planning board's bailiwick. We have utmost regards for the engineering department. They're our right hands. And if they're saying that that's a requirement, it's a requirement.
Mr. Farron, and from my point of view, love you to be in that property. I think it's a great fit for that area. I think it's a great fit for you to be there. I would love to be able to partner with you in town. The only issue that I have is the signage issue along 24, and that just happens to be just a visual thing that we have an area we're building up, and we continue to keep adding signs. It just becomes who's going to have the biggest sign and the more advertising, and it just goes on and on as to how much variance we can give. And that's just, again, I'm one person speaking from the board. It doesn't mean I'm going to reject it. I want to hear all sides, but I do need to be open and let my feelings be, because there is a lot of issues with signage in this town and in this whole area, especially that stretch of 24. It's popping up more and more with these signs, and it's just becoming more of an issue. That's why I'm bringing it up, and I'm bringing it as a part. You're asking for something, it's not like you're asking for something that's by right. You're asking for a variance. So we're not piling something on you. You're asking us, and obviously we've got to be able to a little bit give and take. So this is not anything to do against you or against your project. We want the project here. I think like you've seen, a lot of the people in town and all the town staff are working with you to get that to your end. Unfortunately, if you're saying you're spending $250,000 more on a drainage issue, I don't know what that whole issue is. I haven't been involved in it, so I can't speak to it. And maybe that's something that has to get worked out. I don't know, but if that's what's to make and break of the project, I can't imagine the pole signs to make and break. But I can understand $250,000 in drainage may be an issue. So that's something you'd have to look at.
And I don't think we added anywhere as near that kind of cost with respect to the requests that are made by the planning board. And it is an $8 million project. I'm sure it's $8.25 million as of your comment. But anyway, we're just, again, putting things in perspective.
I'd like to just point out that drainage it's an existing condition of the site. That drainage flows through that site. We have to do something with it. It's not something the engineering department imposed on this applicant. It's an existing condition that needs to be dealt with.
Understood, Craig, but I'm saying that's part of it. And we want to take care of it.
Right, and we appreciate the manner that you've gone about it, but I just wanted to be clear that it's not something that we threw on your lap. It's something that was there.
Okay, with that, I think we're at the stage where we're taking a vote for the continuance to February 25th at 7 o'clock. I need a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Chair votes yes. So we are unanimous. We'll see you on the 25th of February. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Moving quickly, I need a motion to open up the discussion on the petitioned article rezoning on Pleasant Street. I have a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Chair votes yes. All in favor, will the, I see Mr. Waluka, I believe.
Joe, could I speak before you begin on this?
Go ahead, Mr. Shrubble.
Yeah, just something quickly. We have allocated 30 minutes for this agenda item, and reflective of a previous comment made, this 30 minutes is not entirely for a presentation. This 30 minutes is for a presentation and discussion. It's not for 30 minutes is not allocated for one person. So if we could please keep that in mind, and we are running about a half hour behind on our agenda. So if we could please keep this moving, that would be appreciated.
And I just want to also indicate to everybody that's here for the hearing that this is not the end of the public input to the planning board. So the way I'd like to conduct this evening is after Mr. Waluka gives his presentation on behalf of Mr. Kelly and the development team, we will open it up to the public, and the purpose the board will take in consideration and under advisement the comments received from the public with respect to this, and we'll be making a decision much further down the road. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Waluka.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the board. For the record, I'm David Waluka, Waluka Real Estate in Sharon, and I'm here on behalf of the landowners, Peach Orchard Park LLC. I will probably not be more than 10 minutes, Mr. Chairman, so you'll have time for the others, and I appreciate your going on into the night with this. We filed the warrant article for the rezoning of the land on Pleasant Street, currently zoned general business, to the Pleasant Street Senior Housing Zoning District. In addition to being a realtor, I've been a land planner and development consultant since 1968, so I have some background in master plans and writing zoning and so forth, so I'm not here just as a broker. We gave this informal presentation, and just for the record, Mr. Chairman, this is not a hearing, right? This is just informational.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Waluka.
And when we had the neighborhood meeting last night, and in the letter that I sent out to almost 90 people, everyone within 500 feet and all the town meeting members in precinct 1, I made it an issue out of the fact that we were out there to look for information, to give information and get feedback, and that this meeting with the board was for the same reason. The public hearing on the zoning article, I'm guessing, will be sometime in March. On the plan that you see up, it's the general location circled in blue. Pleasant Street, of course, is Route 139, one of the major accesses to Stoughton from Route 24. Next one, John. Thank you. Coming in closer, you see the property fronting on Pleasant Street, abutted by Lowe's Ave, the Dawes School, which, by the way, was once Hanson land, and conservation land. Over the years, it's been the subject of rezoning or reuse attempts, all of which failed to move forward. Peach Orchard acquired the property to develop it as permitted by the current zoning and have been working towards that goal when this new opportunity arose. Next one, John. Last year, this board approved this subdivision plan as per the requirements for the general business zone. As you'll see in the upcoming slides, the question of water looping was raised, and the creation of a loop made a condition of the subdivision approval. In our presentation last night, when we were offering the binary choice of the current use or the proposed use, I made it clear that water looping is going to happen either way. It has nothing to do with the rezoning. It was part of the subdivision approval. Peach Orchard was preparing plans for commercial development when they were approached by Oxford Development Group out of Rhode Island, who want to build age-qualified senior housing. We gave them a complete history of the previous attempt to develop it for a similar use and why we believed it failed. It took all of that into account and believed they could do a better job and respond effectively to the concerns that may not have been addressed adequately previously. Next slide, please, John. This is the planner in me. This was my overall vision for the property if it's rezoned. Lots 1 and 2 would house the senior housing. Lot 3, as you know, is currently in the permitting application stage for self-storage with hopes that that can be in construction in 2021. The land on the left, which Peach Orchard does not own but has under agreement, would be good for higher level uses compatible with the development of the rear 9 acres. Those uses, as well as the development of Lot 3, are allowed by right, subject to site plan approval under the current general business zoning. Next slide, please, John. This is a rendering what Oxford would like to build under the PSSHD zoning. There are 155 two-bedroom senior living units, no 3-bedrooms. They've pushed the buildings as far away as possible from Low Ave, given the constraints of the land. And if you look at the driveways, they're actually putting the parking under the buildings. That's what these driveways represent. That minimizes the amount of surface parking and maximizes the potential for open space and buffer development. Also see the water loop out to the Dawes School, as well as a proposed gated emergency access way for emergency vehicles along the path of that loop. The Oxford team is hardly new to this type of development. Next slide, please. On the upper left are Amelia Apartments in Dartmouth, Mass. These are up. Below that is Crescent View in East Providence, Rhode Island. On the upper right, they're about to break ground on this project in Milton, Massachusetts. And below that is Vistas on the trail in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. Note on that lower right one, on the right side, the garage entry, because that building also has a garage under. So they've been here before. They have lots of experience in doing this, and none of these designs are the same, as you can see. They don't do cookie cutters, and they will work with the neighbors in the town to create something that's appropriate for the site. You can go to the next one, John. Thank you. And here are the plans for development that Peach Orchard has been preparing concurrent with Oxford's desires to build their project. While some details may change as they go through the approval process, the use itself is fully allowed and compliant with the current general business zoning. Again, as you know, Mr. Chair, when you go through site plan approvals, things can change to satisfy the neighbors, the planning board, and anyone else who has any interest in it. Once again, you see the 3-lot storage building on the right, for which permitting is being prepared for submission and construction, hopefully to begin this year. The 2 buildings on lot 1 and 2 are an iteration of self-storage and business bays. And once again, you see the water main loop through to the Dawes School, as well as the gated emergency access way. But what does this use, what might it look like? Next slide, please, John. These are, I just looked for examples that we could all look at. So these are the Boston business bays on Route 1 in Foxborough. They're near the State Police Barracks. They're designed for occupied by small businesses, contractors, craftspeople, things like that. They've been around a while. I actually did a use like this when we did Barnstable Research Park in Hyannis many years ago. That was one of the first of this kind of use. I was not involved with this one, but it was the closest example that you could take a ride over and look and see what it would look like. And the next slide, please. As for the self-storage, this is a generic sketch which shows what they might look like. Again, the building configuration on the sketch plan is just that. It's fully compliant. It could look like this. And we won't know that unless we actually put pen to paper for an application, which we're not going to do unless we know which way the land is going to go. Next chart. So I don't expect you to read the whole chart, but I wanted to show with color coding some of the differences between what the current zoning and that which is on the warrant. We made the minimum land area for the senior housing 3 acres in response to concerns that this rezoning might be duplicated all over town on small parcels. We reduced the maximum building area from 70% to 50% for the other uses and to 40% for senior housing. We doubled the open space requirement for other uses and tripled it for the senior housing. So I think we've addressed the concerns and can come together with a really good looking project. And all of these criteria are much better for the land and for the abutters than what is currently allowed under the GB zone. Next slide, please. And this is one where I tried to make the case last night for the neighbors, and I don't have to reiterate it for this board because you're in charge of it. The rezoning does not give us the permission to build this project or any other. The rezoning gives us the permission to apply for permission to build, subject to 13 pages of conditions under the site plan approval. So it's up to this board and the abutters to make this thing look the way it's supposed to look. One question was asked last night, Mr. Chairman, about things that are not covered by zoning. Someone asked, well, what if we get the zoning, you decide to do something else? And that can be done with a development agreement. And I explained to the neighbors what that was. This board understands what a development agreement is. Next slide, please. And the last one, by the way. So it's up to you as abutters and the town meeting members and the rest of the town to make a choice as to which you prefer. This is binary, what is proposed versus what is currently allowed. We believe that no matter what criteria you use as a measure, the senior housing proposal is far better for the town than this by right development. We believe it's better for the neighbors because it provides much better opportunities for visual barriers, distances from buildings. As you can see in very small type on both of them, that we've actually measured the distances from each of the homes that are directly abut. to the developed portions of of each alternative. They're too small to read, and I'm going to make a chart up for the neighbors to show them what those are. We believe it's far better financially and have commissioned a fiscal impact study from a consultant who specializes in these. He's still doing his research. He's spoken to the fire department about things like ambulance runs, to the police department about calls, to the assessors about revenues, and to the school department to see if kids of any kind come out of these kinds of units. This is 55 plus senior housing. As part of the site plan approval process, we'll have to revisit traffic, which was not found to be problematic then. When the previous studies were done, clearly we have to do a new study, and hopefully once COVID is gone, we can do a new one. Right now, they're using iterations of older studies because current traffic is not indicative of what's going on. The town's master plan clearly identified the dire need for this type of housing. On page 60, it talks about housing that meets the needs of seniors and also continues to be a priority as the population ages. And we think we satisfy that in an environmentally sensitive way, in a visually sensitive way, and in a financially advantageous way, which we'll have to prove to you with the rezoning. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I see that Mr. Zamanian is the first hand raised. Just so that you know, the public listening, our process will be use the raised hand. We'll try to follow, and Mr. Charbonneau will also be looking to make sure that we try to keep people in order of the hands being raised so that we call on you in order. So if you please, please follow that housekeeping rule. And we will endeavor to hear as many as possible. However, we do have some time constraints this evening, so we're going to try to get through as many comments as we can. This is not the only opportunity for the public to opine to the planning board. Again, I just want to reiterate to those of you who've just recently tuned in. With that, Mr. Zamanian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a great number of instances here that could be rebutted in Mr. Waluka's statement, but I would just like to read a statement to you, the planning board, tonight, and I want to thank you for your time to do that. I'd like to take a moment to express some of the frustrations we, as an affected community, are experiencing with the possible development of the land at 600 Pleasant Street. This was brought to the attention of the community that Mr. Kelly had contacted the town and let them know about his intent to have the zoning changed on part of this property. Not once were the residents asked how they feel about this or if there would be support for a zoning change. Instead, a petitioned article was filed with the town clerk's office to be placed on the 2021 annual town meeting warrant. A number of the residents approached town staff and asked if the town, who had already entered into discussion with the developer, mind you, would please speak to the developer and encourage him to sit with the residents to see if an agreement could be reached and both parties concerned could be addressed. We were told in no uncertain terms that this was not going to happen. The developer was going to build what he wants and is not interested in hearing the concerns of the community. It was further stated that if he didn't accept what he chose to do, then he would load the property with storage, regardless of how that would impact our neighborhood. This response was, to say the least, disappointing. Community relations with local developers is the heart of smart development in our town, something this board has always held in high regard in the past. The community is not opposed to development. We understand Mr. Kelly has a right to develop his land, and we respect that right. A single-use development is acceptable to the community. What is not acceptable is the utter lack of respect this developer has shown our community. We live here, work here, socialize together. We are neighbors that pay attention to each other's needs. We care about our homes and the safety of our families. It is not appropriate to put high-density housing, retail space, office space, and storage rental facilities smack in the middle of a quiet, acre lot neighborhood whose infrastructure is already heavily burdened. Our water pressure is negligible and our roadways are under duress. Building a small city would negatively impact the quality of life for our residents. I am asking the board to consider our point of view and recommend a single use for this property in the future. I would further encourage the developer to make an honest effort to sit with the residents and negotiate a plan for the future of this property that we can all be proud of. And Mr. Chair, I want to thank you and the board for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Zemanian. Anybody else would like to speak on this subject? Can I see a raised hand? Mr. Sherbanow, do you see anybody? I don't see any. Oh, Mr. or Ms. Cushman, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm Cindy Cushman, 560 Pleasant Street. And I just wanted to state that it started, I feel like we're going full circle, right? So we've been told, started with Calamar, I know where that all went. And then we were told that it was going to be a, lovely development with a beer garden and some pottery barns and landscape consideration. Then that was pulled off, no conversation. Then we were told we're going to be stuffed with storage units. Then we were told that a landscaper was going to buy all of the property and turn into a landscaping haven for storage of their facilities. Then we were told that it was going to be Calamar, which is what I'm looking at exactly. I know I know there's been discussion of this one looks different. It looks exactly the same. It looks to be 3 to 4 stories. It looks to be spot zoning, and it looks like it's avoiding the single use. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker from the public. Do you have anybody else that would like to speak? Mr. Fox?
There's a Michelle Kaiserman that's got her hand up.
Yeah, Dan, she's had her hand up ever since that public hearing on the 2-lot subdivision. So
I
Okay.
apologize. I didn't realize my hand
Oh,
was still up. Thank you.
Okay.
great.
And
Mr.
there's a
Fox?
Juan Fox. Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Fox.
Thank you. I've always thought that zoning is supposed to drive projects and construction, not the other way around. Zoning is used by the town to control the growth of the town, and to modify it in piecemeal, it just seems to go against how zoning should be treated. So, in my point of view, this property should be either general business or residential, but it should be, contiguously that way, not broken up into patch work zoning. Thank you.
Anybody else? Again, we're looking for raised hands, or we have, it looks like another dozen people that are on the phone call on the meeting. So I don't know if anybody else would like to speak. Ms. Rossi, did you want to speak? Anybody else before we just close tonight's discussion?
So Joe, if I could, I believe that we'd be looking at a public hearing on this project at one of the meetings in March.
Okay, so
people,
I did announce.
People should be aware of that and keep their eye open for one of those 2 meetings in March, either the 2nd or the 4th. So if the board would like to give me a preference of which meeting they prefer.
Any preference? The way things are going now, John, can you project out the
Well, I was thinking it may be a good idea to have it at the 2nd meeting in March, since that's when Mr. Caba will be attending the meetings again, so we have a chance to have a full board. on such an important issue. So that would be my recommendation, to have the meeting, second meeting in March be the public hearing.
I did, thank you. We'll consider that, consider your recommendation. I did see Ms. Nolan that wanted to speak, so I'm going to yield the floor to Ms. Nolan.
Hi,
Go ahead.
I'm Rosemary Nolan, 591 Pleasant Street, and I'm directly across the opening into this project. And I will fight to the end to stop this, because my property is being affected by the traffic that is going up and down in front of my house. And now to have all these people and emergency vehicles going in and out, and the storage and everything about, 55 and over, they're going to be coming out of that street onto Pleasant Street, and the people have to take a left onto Pleasant Street to go to Boston, are in big trouble, because it's almost a blind driveway coming out of there. And there'll be accidents in front of my house. There'll be accidents. It doesn't fit with our neighborhood whatsoever. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you,
I'm
Ms.
not as
Nolan.
articulate as anybody else that's up there.
I see Mr. Zemanian has his hand raised again. Mr. Zemanian?
Mark, unmute yourself, please.
Sorry about that. Mr. Chair, thank you for acknowledging me. I'm actually speaking on behalf of Rick and Joan Westover, who live on Low Avenue. They had a number of very serious concerns about this, and brought this to my attention, asked if I would be kind enough to bring it up to you. They are concerned about blasting. This is a largely ledge-bound area, which obviously brings concerns about how you're going to get underground parking there. But as I said, I would keep my comments more general tonight, and keep those sorts of comments for a continued hearing, an actual public hearing. But she is concerned about the damage that will be done to her house through the blasting. She's lived here all her life, as a matter of fact. I believe this was her parents' house, Joan's parents' house. And, frankly, this has been, forest land for her since her birth. But one of a couple of concerns she is additionally had was the water pressure issue that we experience here in this neighborhood. Looping the system is not going to improve our water pressure, but adding large amounts of buildings, or whether they be storage or residential, would be inconsequential, because it would still dramatically impact what little water pressure we already have. So she's concerned about blasting, she's concerned about water pressure, and she's also concerned about how they think they're going to bring a roadway out through the school. She happens to be a teacher and is deeply concerned about the children at the Dawes School and kind of dangers that could bring to those children. And as I say, this was on behalf of somebody who is having technical difficulties with their computer. And I thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Given the, I'm going to, if I give you give the public one more chance this evening to talk. Otherwise, we'll probably be looking at a public hearing, according to Mr. Charbonneau, on the 25th of March. So this won't be your last point. And the net result, Juan Fox, is that you that have your hand raised?
Yes, I just want to add an additional a question to ask Mr. Baruka. the option of the storage facility, in other words, the GB, the stage GB, I noticed that the difference between that, one of the differences, general differences between that and the version where they have the change of the zone, is that the storage units don't seem to have taken into account of providing some kind of buffer between the buildings and the abutters, where the one for the 55 and older has. And what I wanted to know is why was the 55 and older that consideration taken in, but was not taken in this design for the storage facility?
May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Yes, you may have the floor now, Mr. Luca.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you and the board, and we do intend, we've taken all these into account, making notes, and there will be further meetings with the neighborhood before the next public hearing. The response to the last question was both plans are zoning compliant. The lower plan is what the zoning requires. The upper plan is what the zoning is proposing, a much bigger buffer. But if you look at the lower plan, that buffer is indeed smaller because that's what's required. When we got through site plan review on the lower plan, if the upper plan fails, then things about additional buffers and fencing will come up during the site plan review process. But this is what the general business zone, the existing zoning, requires and allows. That's why it's the way it is.
Anything else, Mr. Waluka?
No, again, I want to thank you for the time. I know the hour is late, and we will be reaching out once. We only had 14 people show up last night, the neighborhood meeting. We sent out 90 invitations to the abutters and town meeting members from Precinct 1. We're going to do it again in the next few weeks, and we'll have more information. We'll have information about water pressure. We'll have information about the economics and all that. And we'll present it to the neighbors. We want them to, we've reached out when we had something to say, and we'll continue to do that. And I look forward to hearing from everybody as well. I've had several reach out to me. We've had conversations and have explained some things and heard some things and made some changes based on that. So it's a process, and we'll patiently get through it. So thank you again, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Scardina, can I say something?
Yes, Mr. Fox, very briefly.
Very briefly. In returning to Mr. Waluka, the letter that he sent out, the link was fairly illegible when it looked at the characters that were in lowercase. I's, it could have been J's, and back and forth. A lot of people probably tried to do it and typed in it as they saw it, but didn't connect. So you may have sent out lots of letters, but the link that you showed on there was a substandard way of showing the characters needed to create the link. And I had to go through three iterations to get to actually be able to get onto the link last night. So I know a lot of people wouldn't bother to go through that effort. So I just want to let you know that there was a flaw in what you did in the letter for the thing last night.
I appreciate that. I'll use a bolder type on the next letter. This is the first I heard of that particular problem, and I'll make sure that the letter, normally you do Zoom meetings by email, since I don't have your email addresses, so I had to do it with a snail mail, as they say. But I will make it bolder and much easier to read next time, and thank you for the comment.
And please do not have it underlined. That was the big problem. The underline covered over whatever character might have a bottom portion of characters that would dip down that low.
That happens automatically when you put a link in, and so I'll have to put it in by hand and take out the underline. I understand that. And again, thank you for that.
With that, we'll see you and anybody else on the 25th of March, according to Mr. Charbonneau. Thank you very much. With that, I'm going to move to the next item, which is the discussion of downtown rezoning. Could I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Demuse. Chairman votes yes. the way I'd like to proceed on this particular subject is I want to introduce the newest iteration that Dan and I worked on, and I'm going to ask Mr. Charbonneau if he would be kind enough to load it.
Okay.
And I'm going to.
So Joe, would that be? You said you guys sent that in the email, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did that come? That came from you or Dan?
Dan.
Came from me.
There we go. 12:30.
Well, you're doing that, Mr. Charbonneau. Just for the sake of anybody else that's on here, I'm going to let Mr. Kelly start the discussion off with respect to the signage, since he's put a great deal of time and effort into that. The two of us met, but Mr. Kelly's done some work offline, and we've had some telephone conferences. So with that, I'm going to give him the opportunity to explain it to Paul, since he's the only other member that's here tonight.
So what we've done at this point in time, the way that the zoning bylaw had been presented up until this point was that it was referencing the existing signage bylaw in town. However, we didn't exist, a CBD district did not exist, so there was nothing in the zoning bylaw that would allow any type of signage. So what we've done is we've taken the zoning signage, and I've just basically put some definitions and created new signs areas for the new SCD district. So when Mr. Charbonneau was able to get that up, we'll be able to see what it exactly what I had done. But basically, I've given different areas of the CBD, because we have a flex zone, we have the transition zone, we have the core zone. Each of those areas have their own signage, and what is allowed in each area, not only by sign but by the number of signs. I've also gone into length about the description of the different types of signs that are going to be allowed in that area, and what the process is to be able to obtain signage for those areas. So it's really a revamp of the entire signage bylaw, but it only adheres to the central business district, and the size of the signage and everything else does not take into account anything else other than the central business district. So, but that's what I put together at this point in time. So if we start out at the beginning, as Mr. Charbonneau has put it up now, there's a general section which explains about the signs and what's going on, purpose and intent. I'm not going to read the entire thing. If you want, we can, but architectural compatibility, it's consistent with area. So if we can keep on going up, John, we have the definitions and the regulations for different types of signs going on, and what each one of them mean, and how we're describing them. And as that goes on, it also talks about what size signs in the different areas it could be. I've put together a table as we go up that gives the different wall sign standards and what the signage will be based upon either wall area, based upon what type of building it is, or what type of sign it is. So that is very well spelled out. I'm sure that it can be much more worked on as more people take a look at this, and there's going to be a lot of comments with it. And I'm sure that there's going to be another way of structuring it. This is not the end all and by all, I'm sure, but at least it's a point of we have in the zoning bylaw now that didn't exist into this area, so that we have some say over what's happening with the signage. You can keep going up, John. We also talk about temporary signs and the lighting of the signs, which will be, very important in downtown. We have a lot of areas down there. We get some, temporary signs that are just all over the place and no consistency with what's going on. So we've tried to limit that and try to get into an area that's consistent for the temporary signage, and that it can be controlled in that area. This is different than everything else in town because it's going to be its own zone. It's got different size buildings. It's got different criteria for lot lines, so it really doesn't fit into any other zoning. So we felt the best way to do this would be to get this together in this type of a package. Do you have any questions from anybody right now, Paul, Joe?
I read it over today. You really did a good job with this.
Thank you, Paul.
And what I appreciate about it, Dan, is I've talked to Joe and you about this, and as we've gone through the downtown rezoning, I've tried to be very sensitive. To, the fact that this is going to be a very complicated bylaw amendment to begin with, just with redoing the regulations. So the signs are definitely something that need to be done. I appreciate the fact that it's being kept simple, because one thing we don't want is to have one aspect of this, whether it be boundaries or signage or whatever, really overwhelming people and having it risk confusing people too much, and people not voting for the overall bylaw. So I appreciate and like the fact that it's been kept very simple, and I think that's key.
Well, just to embellish a bit on Mr. Kelly's comments, we thought that there were two main flaws other than the major one that Mr. Kelly referred to at the beginning of his discussion, that we were lacking. We found that we were coming across terms that had no legal meanings to them. So it left it up to the board to interpret. And whenever that happens, you get uncertainty and lack of uniformity in terms of the implementation of the bylaw. And second of all, it lacked dimensional specificity. They were very general terms and they were rather generous. And so the table that was generated was done with a great deal of thought about what we felt necessary in order to allow the business to market itself competitively without giving people billboards to put on their front of their businesses. So that was the kind of the philosophy that we went into it. And some of the models that we looked at, just to explain what other people do, there was another community that we looked at where the signage bylaw, now this was not just for a district, but it was for the whole town, was municipality, I think it may have been a city, was 44 pages. So we tried to pick the essence, and I think Mr. Kelly did a good job doing that, so that we had guidance and uniformity and predictability without having something that resembles Goethe's Faust in terms of the number of pages. So
that's a great point, Joe. It's actually what Dan has accomplished is actually very difficult. It is easy to create a long document. It's much tougher to take something complicated and boil it down to the key points and keep it simple like he has. So that's a big challenge.
We're not saying it's perfect, but as that great philosopher said, the enemy of better is perfect. So with that, I think that we've really we're interested in rolling this out and seeing what others think of it. But we wanted to start here with the board, and it's too bad we don't have another couple voices here this evening. But John does want to start engaging in a public rollout so that we can get some feedback. And
and to that point, we've John, I've sent you an updated table for the dimensional regulations.
Okay.
We went through the area, but I did go through the width and the depth of the lots, and made comments on those. So if we could get those out to the board members, I'd appreciate that. And if make that part of what you give out to Witten and Horsley would be good. The other issue being is that I think I put it in an email to you, that we have some discrepancy over the amount of lots or the quantity of lots that are going to be in the SCD and also into each of the transition into each of the areas. Now I know that each of the sub-districts are being changed right now. We're moving the core and some of the transition units around. So that's going to change some of that internally, but we need to figure out exactly how many lots we've got in total. And I've just got some discrepancy in information that's been given to me. So we need to look at that.
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Dan, because I'm not going to bring it up tonight because of the time we're at. But I did have an idea for tweaking the internal boundary of the core and the transition on the east side of Washington Street a little bit more. And I won't bring it up tonight, but I'd like to. We have a fairly light agenda on the 11th, so I'd actually like to continue this conversation on the 11th if we could.
I think
That
that's
would be good.
pick up Mr. Garland.
Yeah. And also, what I would request from you gentlemen tonight is, I know there's been some talk about this, and I would like to get the blessing of the planning board to do this. It's clear that we have some things to iron out. We haven't rolled this out to the public yet, and we need to do that. And the warrant closes, I believe, on Tuesday. So, with the board's permission, I would like to prepare a letter to the selectmen from the board and my office, respectively requesting that this warrant article be withdrawn from the spring town meeting and pushed back to a special town meeting in the fall. So I know I've talked about this with Dan and Joe, and I think we're on the same page with this, that we're close, but there's still a couple of unfinished items, and I just don't think we're going to be able to get those items ironed out and get proper outreach to the public before a spring town meeting.
Paul, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I get, I'm just starting to get involved with this, and yeah, I don't have an issue with that.
I will just to share something with you, and to some extent, Mr. Kelly as well. He had an experience with respect to the amendment. I think it's 2 falls ago, when we were doing the off-site parking bylaw. But something as comprehensive as this, and going back to my experience with when we redid the whole bylaw in 2015, we slowly moved it out. We started with the super stakeholders, which are usually the zoning attorneys and some contractors that are active in the town. And then we moved it out there to we kept moving it out further and further to get more and more input into it. And we had at least 3 public engagement and then 1 official public hearing required by the state statute for zoning. So we actually had 4 cracks. That was a much larger project than this is. But this is also a project with 800 people opined on it in a survey, an online survey, which is a record for Stoughton in terms of planning engagement. So I would suggest that having the more public engagement, the more likelihood that the article will pass.
Yeah, I
Just
agree.
Perspective on strategy.
Great.
As much as I want to get this downtown zoning changed, I don't disagree with, this is not ready to turn out at 100%, and I do believe we do need some public input into what we're doing, so that's, it's important.
Excellent, thank you.
And given the track record and the comments during town meeting when we've tried to deal with this on a piece-by-piece basis, the appetite seems to be for a comprehensive project, which I believe I can certainly say with the addition of the signage that I think we're at that point. And again, I would say that it stands a much better chance of passing. And at least my feeling, and I think that it's shared by others, that we're not likely to bring this up again next year. So if this doesn't wet the whistle and satisfy the appetite of town meeting, it's not likely to be brought up again for some time. So we really try to we have one chance. It's like that guy that lost his Bitcoin user ID.
Couldn't remember his password.
He's got 2 more tries. In this case, we have 1 before you lose it. You lose the 250 million.
Okay, great. So I'll prepare that letter and I will submit it to the selectmen before Tuesday.
Thank you, John. We have 1 more item of business, and that's the minutes of October 22nd.
Yeah, Joe, that's a real simple one. I don't even have to pull it up. I sent out the draft. That was the meeting that both Karen and I did not attend. I happened to be on vacation during that time. but I understand that was a long-term, long-range planning meeting only, and there were technical difficulties, both with SMAC and also with, I guess, Dan or Joe trying to record it. So the meeting was aborted fairly quickly. So that's simply what the minutes state, is that the meeting was called to order and aborted shortly thereafter. So there's really not much to these minutes, just stating that it was aborted because of technical difficulties.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I'm going to amend that. Sorry, guys. I'm going to amend that to say that, oh, that's all right. We can do it this way. It's not a decision. And I vote yes. So that's unanimous approval.
Excellent.
And with that, I'm going to ask for that famous favorite motion. Somebody will move to adjourn this meeting to the
Motion to adjourn.
11th of February at 7 o'clock. And I say yes. With that, I wish you all good night on behalf of the Stoughton Planning Board. We'll see you on February 11th at 7 p.m.
Great.
Thank you
Excellent
very
job,
much.
guys. That was a